The real estate agent's email arrived at 3:00 a.m. Mrs. Thompson, there seems to be some confusion. Your husband claims you've agreed to sell the house, but we need your signature to proceed with the closing. I stared at my phone in the darkness of our kitchen. Our beautiful kitchen with its hand-painted tiles and herb garden window that I designed myself. James thought I was asleep upstairs, unaware of his late-night scheming, but I've been tracking his betrayal for months. My name is Catherine Thompson, and my husband of 15 years was about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating me. The signs started appearing 6 months ago, small things at first. James working later than usual, mysterious charges on our credit card, hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Then came the changes in his behavior. The man who once bragged about my cooking suddenly found fault with every meal. My choice of clothes became frumpy, my interests boring. I might have blamed it on a midlife crisis if I hadn't found the receipt, a $122,000 charge at Cartier, dated 3 days after he told me we needed to tighten our belts and cancel our anniversary trip. The receipt was for a bracelet, definitely not for me. That discovery led me down a rabbit hole of investigation. Bank statements showing large cash withdrawals, hotel charges in cities where he supposedly had business meetings, and most recently, emails to real estate agents about selling our home, all from his private account that he didn't know I could access. Katie? James's voice floated down from upstairs. You coming back to bed? Just getting some water, I called back, keeping my voice steady. Be right up. I closed my laptop quietly, my mind racing. This house wasn't just any property, it was my dream home. The one I'd spent 3 years renovating while working as an interior designer. Every room reflected my vision, my creativity, and now James was trying to sell it from under me to fund his affair with a woman young enough to be our daughter. But what he didn't know was that I'd been 2 steps ahead of him for months. The next morning, I watched James leave for work, briefcase in hand, kissing me goodbye like nothing was wrong. As soon as his car disappeared around the corner, I called my lawyer, Rachel. He's making his move, I said as soon as she answered. Got an email from the real estate agent last night. Perfect, Rachel replied, and I could hear her shuffling papers. Everything's in place on our end. Are you sure you want to wait? I thought about the evidence I'd gathered, screenshots of his messages to his girlfriend Amanda, a 23-year-old yoga instructor, records of the money he'd been siphoning from our accounts, the fake business trips that were actually romantic getaways. But timing was everything. No, I said firmly, let him think he's winning. I want to see his face when he realizes what's really happening. After hanging up, I walked through our house, running my hand along the walls I'd carefully painted, remembering the countless hours spent making each room perfect. James had laughed at my attention to detail back then, calling me obsessive. Now I understood he'd never appreciated any of it. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Diana. Just saw James at that new bistro downtown. He's not alone. I asked her to send a photo, even though I knew what I'd see. Sure enough, there he was, sitting across from Amanda, her bleach blonde hair catching the sunlight as she laughed at something he'd said. The Cartier bracelet glinted on her wrist. Thanks, I texted back. Keep me posted. That evening, James came home later than usual, reeking of expensive perfume and wine. He didn't notice how I'd rearranged my home office, moving my important documents to a secure location. He was too busy checking his phone, probably messaging Amanda. Busy day? I asked, serving the dinner I'd prepared, his favorite pot roast with roasted potatoes. Yeah, big client meeting, he muttered, barely looking up. Listen, Katie, we need to talk about the house. I kept my expression neutral, waiting. I've been thinking, he continued, pushing his food around his plate. Maybe it's time for a change. This place is too big for us, and the market's good right now. You want to sell? I asked, making my voice small, uncertain, exactly what he expected from me. He launched into his rehearsed speech about downsizing, investing in new opportunities, finding something more practical. I listened, nodding at all the right moments while my mind raced ahead to what would happen next. I actually talked to a few agents, he admitted, watching my reaction carefully, just to get an idea of the market. I forced tears into my eyes, a trick I'd learned in my college theater days. But this is our home. We've put so much work into it. He reached across the table, patting my hand condescendingly. Sometimes we have to make hard decisions, honey. Trust me. I sobbed, rushing from the table like the emotional, irrational wife he thought I was. Once in our bedroom, I pulled out my phone and texted Rachel. He's making his pitch now. Time to move to phase 2. The next week passed in a blur of activity, all carefully hidden from James. While he thought I was at my design clients' homes, I was actually meeting with financial advisors, documenting his betrayal, and setting up my own security net. Diana kept me updated on James's movements, lunch dates with Amanda, visits to high-end jewelry stores, a suspicious appointment at a luxury car dealership. He was spending money like water, probably promising Amanda the world. Then came the email I'd been waiting for. James had found a buyer for our house. A cash offer well above market value. He forwarded me the details with a note. "This is a great opportunity, honey. We need to move fast." I showed the email to Rachel, who smiled grimly. He really thinks he'll just sign everything over without checking the details. He's never thought I was capable of understanding complex financial matters. I replied, thinking of all the times he dismissed my questions about our investments. That's about to change. That night, James was particularly attentive, bringing home my favorite wine and suggesting we eat on the patio. I knew what was coming: the hard sell, the manipulation, the carefully crafted arguments designed to make me agree to sell our home. "The buyers need an answer by Friday," he said, refilling my wine glass. "They're offering cash, Katie. We'd be foolish to pass this up." I took a sip of wine, studying his face in the fading light. The face I'd woken up to for 15 years now looked different to me, harder, colder, with lies etched into every smile. "You're right," I said softly. "We would be foolish." His eyes lit up with triumph, not noticing the steel beneath my words. "I'll have the papers drawn up tomorrow. We just need your signature and—" "No," I cut him off, my voice firm. "We would be foolish to pass up this opportunity to expose exactly what you've been doing." The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, pulling up the folder of evidence I'd labeled James's secret life. "Should we start with the Cartier bracelet you bought Amanda? Or maybe the hotel receipts? Oh, I know. Let's talk about the money you've been moving to your private account, thinking I wouldn't notice." He stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. "You've been spying on me?" "No, James, I've been protecting myself. Did you really think I'd just stand by while you sold our home to fund your midlife crisis?" The next few hours were chaos. James alternated between rage and pleading, threats and promises, but I stood firm, knowing I held all the cards. When he finally stormed out at midnight, slamming the door behind him, I sent one final text to Rachel. "He knows. Time for the endgame." The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls from James and a string of increasingly desperate texts. "You're making a huge mistake. We can talk about this. Don't do anything stupid, Katie. The buyers won't wait forever." I smiled, making my morning coffee in the kitchen I'd fought so hard to design. James had always underestimated me, treating me like a decorative housewife whose only skill was making things look pretty. He'd forgotten that successful interior design required more than just an eye for color. It required business acumen, attention to detail, and most importantly, the ability to read people. My phone rang again. James's number. This time I answered. "The buyer pulled out," he said without preamble. "Thanks to your little tantrum, we just lost the best offer we'll ever get." "No, James," I replied calmly. "You lost the best thing you ever had. The house was just the last straw." He started to respond, but I cut him off. "Check your email." I listened to his sharp intake of breath as he opened the message from my lawyer, the one detailing every transaction he'd made with our joint funds over the past year, every hotel booking, every gift to Amanda, and most importantly, the legal documentation showing that I'd secured an injunction preventing any sale of our house without explicit court approval. "You can't do this," he sputtered. "I already have." "Oh, and James, Amanda called me this morning." The silence on the other end was deafening. "She was quite surprised to learn you're still married. Apparently, you told her we'd been divorced for 2 years, and that's why you couldn't introduce her to any of your friends or family." This was the moment I'd been waiting for, when James realized just how thoroughly I'd dismantled his plans. What he didn't know was that I'd met with Amanda myself 2 days ago, showing her proof of James's lies and manipulations. "She's young, James, but she's not stupid," I continued. "When I showed her the records of how you've been spending our retirement savings on her, She was horrified. Did you really think she'd want to be part of destroying someone's life? The sound of something shattering came through the phone. James's legendary temper making an appearance. You've ruined everything, he shouted. No, you did that yourself. I just made sure I wouldn't go down with you. After hanging up, I walked through our house, my house now, touching the walls, the furniture, all the pieces of our life together that James had been willing to sacrifice for his midlife fantasy. Diana came over that afternoon, bringing wine and sympathy. How are you holding up? I poured us each a glass, settling into my favorite window seat. Better than I expected. You know what the funny thing is? A year ago, this would have destroyed me. What changed? I thought about it, remembering the moment I found that Cartier receipt. I realized I was worth more than what James thought of me. The moment I stopped trying to save our marriage and started protecting myself, everything became clear. My phone buzzed, an email from Rachel with an update on the divorce proceedings. James' attempts to hide assets had backfired spectacularly, triggering a forensic audit of all his accounts. The judge was not amused by his financial manipulations. Ms. Thompson, Rachel wrote, given the evidence of financial misconduct, we're in a strong position to secure not just the house, but a significant portion of all marital assets. Would you like to proceed? I typed back a simple yes. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and revelations. James's carefully constructed world unraveled piece by piece. His company launched an investigation into his expense accounts, finding years of questionable charges. Amanda, hurt and angry at his deception, provided her own evidence of his lies. Through it all, I maintained my design business, even landing a major contract to renovate a historic hotel. The client had specifically requested me after seeing our house featured in a design magazine, the same house James had tried to sell behind my back. One evening, as I reviewed renovation plans in my home office, the doorbell rang. It was James, looking disheveled and defeated. Can we talk? He asked, his voice rough. I let him in, noticing how he took in the changes I'd made to the house. The new art on the walls, the rearranged furniture, all traces of his presence erased. I messed up, Katie, he said, sinking into a chair. Amanda's gone. The company suspended me pending their investigation, and my lawyer says I'll be lucky if I don't face criminal charges for the financial stuff. What did you expect, James? That you could steal our future and I just accept it? He ran his hands through his graying hair. I don't know what I thought, that I deserved more. That you'd be lost without me. I laughed, genuinely amused. That was always your problem. You saw me as an accessory to your life, not a partner. You never understood that I was building my own success while you were busy destroying yours. The final divorce settlement came through 3 months later. I kept the house, my business, and most of our assets. James's financial misconduct had cost him dearly, both in the settlement and in his career. Amanda, to her credit, had turned her life around. She'd returned the bracelet and other gifts, using the money to start her own yoga studio. She even hired me to design the space. I'm sorry, she'd said during our first design meeting. I never meant to hurt anyone. I really thought you were divorced. We both learned some hard lessons, I replied. The important thing is what we do afterward. A year after that night in the kitchen when I'd received the real estate agent's email, I stood in my garden hosting a celebration. My design business had expanded, adding 3 new designers and a commercial division. The historic hotel renovation had won awards, leading to more high-profile projects. Diana raised her glass in a toast to new beginnings. As my friends and colleagues cheered, I looked around at the home I'd fought to keep, the business I'd built, and the life I'd reclaimed. My phone buzzed. A text from James's sister. He's living in a small apartment now, working an entry-level job. Keeps saying he should have appreciated what he had. I didn't respond. James' regrets weren't my concern anymore, and instead, I turned to my guests, raising my own glass. To knowing your worth, I said, and never letting anyone make you forget it. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat in my garden, listening to the fountain I'd installed where James's prized grill used to be. The stars were bright above, the air fragrant with jasmine I'd planted last spring. My phone lit up with an email, another client requesting a consultation. Life moved forward, bringing new opportunities, new challenges, new chances to prove what I was capable of. James had thought selling our house would fund his new life, Instead, his betrayal had freed me to create something better than I'd ever imagined. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed makes room for everything you deserve. I touched the warm stones of the house, my house, feeling the strength of its foundation beneath my fingers. Like me, it had weathered storms and emerged stronger. Every room told a story now, not of what was lost, but of what was gained when I finally stood up for myself. The next morning, I had 3 client meetings, 2 project reviews, and a consultation with a potential investor interested in expanding my business nationally. James' attempts to diminish me had only proven how much I could accomplish on my own. As I got ready for my day, I caught my reflection in the mirror, a woman who had turned betrayal into triumph, pain into power. The house he tried to sell had become the symbol of my independence, and a life he tried to destroy had transformed into something far greater than his limited vision could have imagined. After all, the best revenge isn't just success. It's succeeding in ways your betrayer never thought possible.
The gallery's pristine walls mocked me with their perfection, each carefully hung piece of my siblings' artwork, a reminder of everything I hadn't achieved. I stood in the corner, clutching my wine glass like a shield, watching my mother fawn over Skylar's latest masterpiece. I'm Marley, and tonight was supposed to be my breakthrough moment. Instead, I was relegated to spectator at my siblings' 3rd solo exhibition this year. The depth of emotion in this piece is extraordinary, my mother gushed to a cluster of art critics. Skylar has always had such natural talent. The wine turned bitter in my mouth. Natural talent. As if the last 15 years of my dedication to art meant nothing. My daughter Riley tugged at my sleeve, her 7-year-old face scrunched in confusion. "Mama, why does Grandma never talk about your paintings like that?" Before I could answer, my partner Chloe appeared, wrapping an arm around Riley's shoulders. "Hey, sweetie, I think I saw some fancy cookies by the entrance. Want to check them out?" I shot Chloe a grateful look as she led our daughter away. The crowd shifted, creating a pocket of space near one of Skylar's larger pieces, an abstract explosion of reds and golds that probably had some profound meaning I was supposed to understand. "It's derivative," a familiar voice muttered beside me. My friend Everly materialized, wearing a black dress that screamed rebellion against the gallery's understated dress code. "Seriously, I've seen better composition in a kindergarten finger painting class." "Keep your voice down," I whispered, though her words soothed my bruised ego. "The last thing I need is—" "Did you see the write-up in Art Weekly?" My brother-in-law Jason's voice carried from behind a nearby sculpture. I froze, recognizing my mother's responding murmur. "Yes, they're calling Skylar the voice of our generation," my mother said. "Such a relief after. Well, you know how worried we were when both our children wanted to pursue art. Thank goodness one of them had the talent to succeed." The wine glass trembled in my hand. Everly grabbed my arm, but I shook her off, moving closer to hear more. "Marley's still doing those little cafe shows, right?" Jason asked. "At least she has Chloe to support her. Not everyone's cut out for real success in this world." Something hot and ugly unfurled in my chest. I stepped around the sculpture, ready to confront them, when my heel caught on something. A cream-colored envelope lay half-hidden under the installation's base. I snatched it up, my name written across the front in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an email printout dated 3 years ago, when I'd been shortlisted for the Carlton Prize. "Regarding your inquiry about Marley's submission," the email read, "You're right, her technical skills are questionable. Thank you for bringing these concerns to our attention. We'll be removing her from consideration." The signature belonged to the prize committee chair, but the email was addressed to my sibling. My hand shook as I read it again. 3 years ago, that prize could have launched my career. Instead, I'd received a form rejection letter, leading to months of self-doubt that nearly made me quit painting altogether. "Marley," Skylar's voice cut through my thoughts. My sibling stood before me, champagne glass raised in false celebration. "You look pale. Not feeling well?" I met Skylar's eyes, seeing for the first time the calculation behind the concern. How many other opportunities had been quietly sabotaged? How many doors closed before I could even reach them? "I'm fine," I said, folding the paper carefully and slipping it into my pocket. Just admiring your work. It must be nice, having everything come so naturally. Skylar's smile flickered for just a moment, enough to confirm what I now knew. This wasn't just about talent or success. This was about systematic destruction, wrapped in family loyalty and tied with ribbons of concern. Well, two could play at that game, and I had nothing left to lose. The email burned in my pocket throughout the mandatory family dinner the following evening. My mother had insisted we all gather to celebrate Skylar's success, as if the gallery opening hadn't been enough. I pushed my food around the plate while my mother detailed every compliment the critics had given my siblings' work. Chloe's empty chair beside me felt like an accusation. Another late night at the office with Jeremiah. And the way you captured the interplay of light and shadow, my mother continued. It reminds me of that phase Marley went through in college. Remember those dark, moody pieces? They weren't a phase, I said, gripping my fork tighter. That's still my style. Oh, my mother's dismissal came wrapped in a delicate sip of wine. I thought you'd moved past that. Riley, coloring beside me at the table, looked up from her drawing. I like Mama's dark pictures. They make me feel things. That's sweet, dear, my mother said. But you should see what your Aunt Skylar painted at your age. Pure talent, even then. My father cleared his throat. The pot roast is excellent, Olivia. Speaking of talent, Jason cut in. Skylar, tell them about the commission you just landed. The one for the new medical center. The fork bent slightly in my hand. That commission was supposed to be confidential. I'd applied for it last month. Oh, it's nothing special, my siblings said with practiced modesty. Just a series of pieces for their pediatric wing. Nothing special, my mother beamed. It's the largest commission in the city this year. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. Riley, time to pack up your crayons. But Mama, I want to show everyone my drawing of Aunt Skylar's painting. Show them, sweetheart, Skylar encouraged. I'd love to see your interpretation. Riley held up her paper proudly. See? It's the big red one from the gallery. And look what I found hidden in it. My breath caught as Riley pointed to a series of marks in her drawing. Similar marks I'd seen in Skylar's actual painting, but hadn't paid attention to before. What do you mean, hidden? I asked carefully. The little numbers. They're tucked into all the swirly parts, like a secret code. I counted 7 of them. Skylar's champagne glass clattered against the table. Such an active imagination, my siblings said quickly. Kids see patterns everywhere. But I'd seen the flash of panic in Skylar's eyes. Those numbers meant something. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Sorry, Jeremiah needs me to stay late again. Don't wait up. Everything okay? My father asked. My expression. Perfect, I lied, helping Riley gather her art supplies. We need to get home, school night. But you've barely touched your food, my mother protested. And Skylar was going to share some exciting news about. I'm sure I'll hear all about Skylar's latest triumph eventually. The bitterness slipped out before I could stop it. It's not like anyone in this family talks about anything else. Silence fell over the table. My father studied his plate while Jason wrapped a protective arm around Skylar's shoulders. Marley, my mother's voice carried that familiar note of disappointment. There's no need for jealousy. Everyone finds their level eventually. Right, I grabbed my coat, helping Riley into hers. And I suppose Skylar found theirs by sabotaging everyone else's chances. What are you implying? Skylar stood, facade cracking slightly. Nothing. Yet. I met my siblings' gaze. But maybe we should talk about the Carlton Prize sometime. Or those mysterious numbers Riley noticed in your painting. Mama, Riley tugged at my sleeve. Why is everyone mad? We're not mad, sweetie, Skylar said, voice honey sweet. Your mother's just tired. Making art can be so draining when it doesn't come naturally. I guided Riley toward the door, pausing only to say, you know what else is draining? Maintaining lies. But don't worry, sibling dear. I'm about to make things much easier for you. As we left, I heard my mother asking Skylar what I'd meant about the Carlton Prize, but I was already plotting my next move. Those numbers in the painting weren't random. They were dates, and I had a feeling they'd lead me to every opportunity Skylar had stolen from me. 7 dates, Everly said, spreading printouts across my studio floor. 7 rejections. 7 opportunities that went to Skylar instead of you. The morning light caught dust motes dancing around my easel, where a half-finished canvas waited. I hadn't touched it since discovering the email. Look at this one. Everly pointed to a grant rejection from last spring. The timing matches the 3rd number Riley found in the painting. And guess who was on the selection committee? Let me guess. Someone Skylar knows. Better, someone our mother knows. Everly's dark eyes flashed. The committee chair plays tennis with her every Sunday. I pressed my palms against my temples. That doesn't prove anything. No? Then explain this. She held up her phone, showing a social media post from 2 years ago. My mother, the committee chair, and Skylar at some charity event. The date matched another rejection letter. My phone buzzed. Chloe. Working late again. Jeremiah needs the quarterly reports tonight. Still no Chloe? Everly asked, noting my expression. She's barely been home this week. I tossed the phone aside. Jeremiah's got her working impossible hours. Convenient timing, don't you think? Right when you're closest to exposing. A knock at the studio door cut her off. My childhood friend Marcus stood there looking uncomfortable. Sorry to interrupt, he said. Door was opened downstairs. Marcus. I hadn't seen him in months. What are you doing here? He shifted, not quite meeting my eyes. Heard about the gallery opening and the dinner after. Thought you might need a friend. How did you hear about the dinner? Everly asked sharply. I ran into Skylar yesterday. The air seemed to thicken. You saw my sibling? At the art supplies store. Marcus stepped inside, closing the door. Look, they're worried about you, Marley. Said you've been making accusations. They sent you to spy on me. Bapaying. The betrayal tasted metallic. No, I mean, they mentioned you seemed unstable lately. Unstable. I grabbed one of the rejection letters. Is that what they call discovering years of sabotage? They said you might say something like that. Marcus glanced at the papers scattered across the floor. Come on, Marley. You really think Skylar orchestrated some grand conspiracy? Maybe you're just... If you say jealous, I swear I'll throw you out myself. Everly interrupted. I was going to say struggling. Marcus held up his hands. It's okay to admit when you need help. Skylar mentioned they know a great therapist. Get out. My voice shook. And tell my sibling that if they want to check on me, they can do it themselves instead of sending flying monkeys. After Marcus left, Everly helped me gather the evidence we'd collected. You realize what this means, right? Skylar's scared. They're trying to discredit you before you can expose them. By making me look paranoid. I stared at the numbers Riley had copied from the painting. But they made a mistake hiding these dates in their work. Pride or something else. Speaking of pride, Everly pulled up another social media post. Look who just announced their upcoming solo show at the Hamilton Gallery. My stomach dropped. The Hamilton Gallery had been my dream venue since art school. I'd submitted portfolios every year for a decade. 3 weeks from now, I read aloud. With special guest speaker, Jeremiah Walsh, Chloe's boss, Everly frowned. That can't be coincidence. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Your sibling isn't who you think they are. Meet me at Andrew's studio tomorrow morning if you want proof. Marcus? Everly asked, reading over my shoulder. No, I said slowly. I think it's from my old mentor, but why now? Could be a trap. Or it could be the evidence we need. I looked at my half-finished canvas, then at the dates that marked each stolen opportunity. Either way, I'm done letting Skylar write my story. What are you going to do? I picked up a brush, finally ready to paint again. I'm going to turn their own technique against them. If Skylar can hide messages in their art, so can I. And my exhibition is going to tell the truth about every single one of those 7 dates. Marley? Everly's voice held a warning. Be careful. You're playing with fire. Good, I said, making the first bold stroke across the canvas. It's about time someone got burned. Andrew's studio smelled of turpentine and stale coffee, just as it had during my student days. My old mentor hunched over his workbench, looking smaller than I remembered. I wondered when you'd finally figure it out, he said without turning around. Took you long enough. You knew? The betrayal felt like acid in my throat. All this time you knew what Skylar was doing? Knew? He laughed, a hollow sound. Kid, I was part of it. He pushed a folder across the workbench. Inside were emails, dozens of them, spanning years. My hands shook as I read exchanges between Andrew, Skylar, and various gallery owners, competition judges, grant committees. Why? I managed to ask. Your sibling made me an offer, said they'd fund my retirement, get my work into major collections. He finally turned to face me. I was tired of being the forgotten genius, watching younger artists pass me by. So you helped destroy my career instead. I wrote the recommendations they needed, made the right calls. It wasn't personal. Wasn't personal? I slammed the folder down. You were like a father to me. And look how well that turned out for your real father. Andrew's words hit like a slap. Francis always favored you, didn't he? Maybe Skylar deserved their turn. And my phone buzzed. Chloe again. I ignored it. There's more, Andrew said. About your partner's boss, Jeremiah. He's not just keeping Chloe busy with work. What do you mean? They're planning something. The Hamilton Gallery show isn't just about Skylar's art. He pulled out another document. Look at the investor list. Jeremiah's name was there, along with several shell companies I didn't recognize. But one name made my blood freeze. Chloe's. She's been investing in Skylar's work for months, Andrew said, through Jeremiah's art investment firm. The studio door creaked. I spun around to find Chloe standing there, her face pale. I can explain, she said. How long? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. How long have you been working with them? It's not what you think. Chloe stepped closer. Jeremiah showed me the numbers. Skylar's work is appreciating faster than any other artist in the region. I was trying to secure our future, build something for Riley. By backing the person who's been systematically destroying my career? I didn't know about that part, not until recently. She reached for me, but I stepped back. When I found out, I started gathering evidence. That's why I've been working late. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? I gestured at Andrew's folder. By secretly investing in my siblings' success while I struggled. By watching me doubt myself year after year. There's still time to fix this, Andrew interrupted. The Hamilton show. If certain things came to light, if the right people started asking questions, you want to help now? I laughed bitterly. After years of sabotage, I want to make things right. He pulled out a USB drive. Everything's here, the emails, the doctored recommendations, the financial records, including Jeremiah's less-than-legal art investment schemes. My phone buzzed again. A text from Everly. Where are you? Skylar's here at your studio with your mother. They're going through your new work. I have to go. I grabbed the USB drive and folder. My siblings about to get a preview of their own exposure. Marley, wait! Chloe called after me. You don't understand what they're capable of. No, I turned back one last time. You don't understand what I'm capable of. And neither does Skylar. I left them both there, my mentor and my partner, 2 more betrayals to add to the growing list. But their duplicity had given me something valuable, proof. Now I just had to reach my studio before Skylar destroyed the paintings that would reveal everything. As I drove, my phone kept buzzing. Messages from my mother, from Skylar, from Chloe. I ignored them all. Let them worry. Let them wonder what I would do next. They'd all underestimated me for years. Time to show them exactly what that mistake would cost them. I burst into my studio to find Skylar holding one of my new canvases, the one with the hidden dates woven into abstract shadows. My mother stood nearby, frowning at the dark imagery. These are different, my mother said, more angry than usual. Put it down. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I'm trying to understand, Skylar said, not releasing the canvas. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish with these? Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing about sabotaging my career. I pulled out Andrew's folder. Want to explain these emails? Or should we start with Jeremiah's investment scheme? My mother stepped forward. What are you talking about? Show her, Everly said from the doorway. Show them both. I spread the documents across my workbench. Emails, recommendations, financial records, a paper trail of betrayal. My mother's face paled as she read. This can't be right, she whispered. Can't it? I pointed to specific dates. Every rejection, every missed opportunity, all orchestrated by your perfect child. You're misinterpreting things, Skylar said, but their hands trembled slightly. These were business decisions, nothing more. Business? I laughed. Like having Andrew tank my recommendations, like having Chloe invest in your work behind my back. My mother's head snapped up. Chloe's involved? Everyone's involved, Mother. Everyone except you and Dad, though I'm sure you'll find a way to justify it all. That's enough. Skylar set down the canvas. You're spinning conspiracy theories because you can't accept that I'm not as talented as you. I grabbed my phone, pulling up photos of Skylar's painting. Explain the numbers then. The dates hidden in your masterpiece. Quite a coincidence they match every major setback in my career. Silence fell. My mother looked between us, her carefully maintained worldview cracking. I did what I had to do, Skylar finally said. You were always Dad's favorite, always the special one. Even when you failed, he believed in you more than me. So you destroyed my career to punish Dad. I earned my success. Skylar's composure shattered. Every sabotaged application, every manipulated judgment, it proved I could beat you on any playing field. Even with your raw talent, I won. My mother sank into a chair. How could you? How could I? Skylar whirled on her. You taught me. Always pushing, always comparing. Why can't you paint like your sibling? Why aren't you as creative? Until I found a way to win your approval instead. By cheating, I said quietly. By stealing opportunities from others. How many artists did you destroy besides me? A new voice answered from the door. Too many. My father stood there holding a manila envelope. I've suspected for years but couldn't prove it. Until now, then. Dad? Skylar's voice wavered. What do you mean? I've been gathering evidence, he said. Working with gallery owners, other artists, building a case. He handed me the envelope. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, Marley. I wanted proof first. Inside were more documents, a pattern of manipulation stretching beyond just my career. Dozens of artists, countless competitions, all corrupted by Skylar's schemes. The Hamilton Gallery show, my father continued. It's built on fraud, and now we can prove it. You can't do this, Skylar whispered. My reputation, your reputation. My mother stood. You destroyed lives, used our connections, our trust. I did it for you, Skylar shouted. Everything I did was to be worthy of what? I asked. Their love? Their pride? Look what it cost you. Look what it cost everyone. My phone buzzed. Chloe again. But another message caught my eye. An email from Howard, the gallery owner I'd always seen as a rival. Subject line: let's talk about your siblings' show. I looked at my family, my shattered mother, my quietly determined father, my desperate sibling, and made a decision. The Hamilton show opens in 2 weeks, I said. Just enough time to prepare my own exhibition, one that tells the real story. Marley, my father warned, be careful, revenge can... This isn't about revenge anymore. I picked up my paint-stained brush. It's about justice, for everyone they've hurt. I met Skylar's eyes. You taught me how to hide messages in art. Time to show you what else I've learned. Howard's gallery felt different at night, the empty halls amplifying every footstep. He studied my proposal under the harsh track lighting, his expression unreadable. A counter-exhibition, he said finally, opening the same night as your siblings' show. With proof of every manipulation, every stolen opportunity. I spread the evidence across his desk. Not just mine, everyone's. Bold move. He tapped the documents. Also, career suicide if you're wrong. I'm not wrong. No, he agreed. You're not, but there's something you don't know. My phone buzzed. Marcus again. I'd been ignoring his calls since our confrontation at Andrew's studio. Jeremiah isn't just Chloe's boss, Howard continued. He's been buying up smaller galleries. Bob's bought diaries, including mine. By next way, he'll own controlling interest in half the exhibition spaces in the city. The implications hit hard. He's working with Skylar. Smart girl. Why do you think your siblings' show is happening here? My carefully constructed plan crumbled. Without a venue, without a platform. There's more, Howard said. Check your email. A message from the Art Board's Ethics Committee appeared on my phone. My hands shook as I read, "Investigation into allegations of plagiarism and fraud against me. Skylar filed the complaint this morning with evidence." What evidence? They're using your own technique against you. Those hidden messages in your recent work, they're claiming you stole the idea from them, and they have backdated proof. A knock interrupted us. Marcus stood in the doorway, looking grim. "You should have answered my calls," he said. "Chloe's gone." "What do you mean, gone?" "She took Riley to your mother's, said something about protecting her from what's coming." The room tilted slightly. "My daughter is safe," Marcus said, "but Chloe's working with Jeremiah now, officially." Howard pushed a document across his desk. "The Hamilton show isn't just an exhibition. It's the launch of a new art investment fund. Your partner is listed as managing director. They're not just trying to stop you," Marcus added. "They're trying to erase you." My phone buzzed again. "Everly, this time. 911, someone broke into your studio. All your new work. Marley, it's gone." The floor seemed to drop away. Months of work, all my evidence woven into paintings. "There's still a way," Marcus said quietly. "Remember what we discussed about making sure Skylar never recovers?" "What's he talking about?" Howard asked. "He has proof of tax fraud," I said. "Enough to send Skylar to prison." "Along with Jeremiah and half the art scene," Marcus added. "One anonymous tip." Howard studied me. "That would destroy more than careers, families, lives, including your daughter's family name." "But Skylar would finally pay," Marcus pressed. "Isn't that what you wanted?" I thought of Riley, of Chloe, of my mother's broken expression when she learned the truth, of my father's quiet gathering of evidence, choosing justice over vengeance. "No," I said, "not like this." "Then what's your play?" Howard asked. "They have everything. The venues, the narrative, your partner, your work." "Not everything." I pulled out my phone, dialing a number I'd memorized years ago. "They don't have the truth." "Who are you calling?" "The one person who can still reach Skylar. The one person who started all this with their constant comparisons and pressure." My mother answered on the first ring. "Marley, Riley's asking for you." "Mom," I cut her off. "I need your help. And this time you have to choose a side." Silence stretched between us. "Then, what do you need?" "Your confession. About how your favoritism drove Skylar to this. About everything you saw but ignored. Will you do it?" Another pause. "Yes," she said finally. "It's time." I looked at Howard. "Still have that contact at the Arts Journal?" He nodded slowly, understanding dawning. A mother's confession would be compelling. "More than compelling," Marcus said. "It would be devastating." My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Skylar. "Last chance to back down. Don't make me destroy everything you have left." I typed back 3 words. "Too late, sibling." The game wasn't over. It was just changing rules. The Hamilton Gallery hummed with opening night energy. Skylar's exhibition foiled the main space, while my hastily arranged response show occupied the smaller side gallery, a compromise Howard had negotiated at the last minute. I stood before my centerpiece, a triptych of dark canvases, each hiding dates and documents beneath layers of paint that would become visible under the right light. "They're here," Everly whispered, appearing at my side, all of them. Through the gathering crowd I spotted them. Jeremiah leading a group of investors, Chloe at his side looking uncomfortable, my mother near the entrance, clutching her prepared statement. Andrew hovering uncertainly between the two galleries, and finally, Skylar, moving through their admirers with practiced grace. "Ready?" Howard asked, finger hovering over the lighting controls. I nodded, and the gallery lights dimmed. UV lights activated, revealing the hidden elements in my paintings. Every piece of evidence, every manipulated competition, every stolen opportunity glowing in phosphorescent paint. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they realized what they were seeing. Skylar froze mid-conversation, face draining of color. "Ladies and gentlemen," Howard announced, "welcome to Truth in Shadow, a special exhibition about artistic integrity." My mother stepped forward, hands shaking as she unfolded her statement. But before she could speak, Jeremiah cut through the crowd. "This is a publicity stunt," he announced. "Ms. Marley here is under investigation for plagiarism." "Actually," my father's voice rang out as he emerged from the crowd, "the investigation has been dropped. The ethics committee received some very interesting evidence this morning." Chloe broke away from Jeremiah's side, moving toward me. "Marley, I can explain." "Not now," I said quietly. "Watch." The central canvas began to shift under the UV light, revealing a hidden image, Skylar's signature technique, dated years before they claimed to have invented it. Proof they had stolen it from one of the artists they'd destroyed. "That's impossible," Skylar breathed. "Is it?" I turned to face my sibling. "Like it was impossible for you to manipulate Andrew, to use Jeremiah's money to buy control of galleries? To convince Chloe that betraying me was for our daughter's good?" "I did what I had to do," Skylar snapped. "You have no idea what it's like living in your shadow." "My shadow?" I laughed. "While you were stealing opportunities, buying success, I was fighting for every scrap of recognition. The shadow was yours, built on lies and manipulation." "Enough." Jeremiah moved to intervene, but Howard stepped forward. "I wouldn't," he said. "The Arts Journal livestream has been running since the doors opened. Everything's being broadcast." The crowd parted as my mother approached Skylar. "I did this," she said, voice breaking. "My favoritism, my pressure. I turned you into this." "Mother, don't." "The truth, Skylar. For once." Something cracked in my siblings' carefully maintained facade. "I just wanted to make you proud," they whispered. "By destroying others?" My father joined us. "By hurting your own family?" "Family?" Skylar gestured at the revealing paintings. "Look what Marley's doing right now." "I'm showing the truth," I said. "Something you taught me, remember? Hidden messages in art?" A small voice cut through the tension. "Mama?" Riley stood in the gallery entrance, having slipped away from our neighbor, Amy's supervision. She looked at the glowing paintings, then at her other mother. "Chloe," I said softly, "take her home." "No," Skylar interrupted. "Let her stay. Let her see what her mother's revenge looks like." "This isn't revenge," I said, meeting my sibling's eyes. "It's justice. For every artist you destroyed, every dream you stole, the truth doesn't destroy people, Skylar. Lies do." The gallery erupted in camera flashes as reporters pushed forward, questions overlapping. But above the chaos, I heard Howard's quiet words. "Check your phone." A message waited from an unknown number. "Your work speaks truth to power. When you're ready to show it properly, the Venice Biennale has an opening. H." I looked up to find Skylar staring at me, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. But in their eyes, beneath the anger and fear, I saw something else. Relief. The truth, finally exposed, had set us both free. The Venice sun painted my new studio in shades of gold as I added the final touches to my latest piece. A knock at the door made me pause, brush hovering over canvas. "Still hiding in here?" Everly asked, stepping inside. "The water taxi's waiting." Riley's already bouncing with excitement about the opening. I studied my work. No hidden messages this time, just raw truth on canvas. "Is everyone here?" "Your parents arrived this morning." Andrew's been pacing the gallery since dawn. "Even Howard flew in from New York." She hesitated. "And Skylar sent something." My hand tightened on the brush. "What?" "A letter, and one of their early pieces. From before, everything." The painting sat wrapped in brown paper, propped against the wall. Beneath it lay a sealed envelope. "Have you heard from Chloe?" I asked, cleaning my brush. "She's doing well in her new gallery. Riley loves visiting her there on weekends." Everly touched my shoulder. "You made the right choice, letting her go." "I know, and I did. Some betrayals couldn't be undone, but they could be forgiven. For Riley's sake, if nothing else." The letter felt heavy in my hands as I opened it. "Dear Marley, I spent years trying to escape your shadow, only to cast a darker one. The truth you exposed didn't destroy me. It freed me. I'm starting over, teaching art to children. They see beauty without competition, creation without corruption. Maybe that's something I needed to learn. Skylar." I unwrapped the painting, a small piece from our college days, before ambition and jealousy poisoned everything. Two figures, faces turned toward a bright horizon. "We should go," Everly said softly. "They're waiting." The gallery buzzed with anticipation. My mother stood with my father near the entrance, her therapy-strengthened smile genuine as she hugged me. Andrew hovered nearby, his redemption found in mentoring young artists, warning them about the industry's darker sides. "Ready?" Howard asked, appearing at my elbow. I nodded, and he signaled the staff. The lights dimmed, but this time there were no hidden revelations, no accusations glowing in the dark. Instead, each canvas told a story of recovery, of truth's aftermath, of shadows transformed into light. "Mama, look!" Riley tugged my hand, pointing to a small painting near the end. "Is that me?" The piece showed a child's hands holding broken pieces of a mirror, each shard reflecting something different: family, art, truth, forgiveness. I'd painted it the day Chloe and I signed our divorce papers. "You inspired it," I told her. "You showed me how to see clearly." Speaking of seeing clearly, my father approached, holding another envelope. "This came for you." And inside was a single sheet of paper, a list of names, and contact information. Artists Skylar had sabotaged over the years. Each one now offered a chance at redemption through Howard's new foundation. "Your sibling provided the list," my father said. "And the funding." "And Jeremiah, facing charges for investment fraud. Turns out your exposure inspired quite a few whistleblowers." The gallery filled with critics, collectors, and artists. Some familiar, some new. No hidden agendas, no secret competitions. Just art, honest and raw. My mother touched my arm. "I've been thinking about shadows lately," she said. "How we cast them without realizing. How they distort everything they touch. I'm sorry I couldn't see clearly before." "We all cast shadows," I replied. "The trick is learning to paint with them." Later, as the evening wound down, I found Skylar's painting again. Those two figures, facing the horizon, not running from shadows, but walking toward light. A new message appeared on my phone. "Some truths take time to understand. Thank you for showing me mine. S." I looked around the gallery, at my daughters sketching in a corner, my parents talking with Howard, Everly arranging my next showing. The shadows were still there, but they didn't dominate anymore. They were just another color on the palette. Another layer of depth in the greater picture. I picked up my brush again. There were more stories to tell, more truths to paint, but this time I'd create them in full light, letting the shadows fall where they may. The basement door slammed behind me with such force that dust particles danced in the thin beam of light streaming through the keyhole. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stumbled down 3 steps before catching myself on the cold railing. "Have fun with the spiders, Sienna." Madison's voice dripped with venom from the other side. The lock clicked into place, and her footsteps faded away upstairs, each one echoing like a nail in my coffin. "I'm Sienna, and this is how my 16-year-old stepdaughter decided to welcome me home after my first business trip as a married woman." "Madison, this isn't funny." I pounded on the door, my fist connecting with solid wood. The impact sent shockwaves up my arm, but the pain barely registered through my rising panic. "Let me out right now, sister." Silence answered. Well, not complete silence. Something scuttled in the darkness behind me, and my skin crawled. I fumbled for my phone, cursing when I remembered it was still in my purse, upstairs in the kitchen, where I dropped it before Madison asked me to check something in the basement. The darkness pressed in around me, thick and suffocating. I'd avoided this basement since moving in 6 months ago. Daniel had laughed at my unease, calling it cute how I'd send him down to fetch things from the storage room. If he only knew how his precious daughter would use my fear against me. "Help!" I screamed, knowing it was useless. Daniel wouldn't be home from work for hours, and our nearest neighbors were too far to hear. My hand brushed against something in my jacket pocket, the small flashlight I'd started carrying after that power outage last month. With trembling fingers, I clicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. Boxes, shelves, old furniture draped in sheets, normal basement stuff that somehow looked sinister in the harsh light. A mirror in the corner caught my reflection. Wide eyes, pale face, disheveled dark hair. I barely recognized myself. "Think, Sienna, think," I muttered, forcing myself to take deep breaths. The basement had to have another way out. The previous owners mentioned something about a crash upstairs made me jump. Madison's voice drifted down, speaking to someone. My blood ran cold when I recognized Rachel's voice, my best friend who was supposed to come over for coffee. "Sienna, she left about an hour ago," Madison said, her voice perfectly concerned. "Said something about running errands. I can tell her you stopped by when she gets back." That little snake. I could picture her now, all innocent smiles and worried eyes, playing the part of the perfect stepdaughter while I was trapped down here like some dirty secret. "Oh, that's weird," Rachel replied. "She texted me to come over. Maybe she got delayed. You know how she is, always running late." The conversation continued, but their voices grew fainter. No, no, no. Rachel couldn't leave. She was my only chance. I opened my mouth to scream again, but stopped. Madison would only turn it against me somehow. She'd been doing that for months, twisting every situation, making me look unstable, paranoid. Even Daniel had started giving me those concerned looks, suggesting maybe I was too stressed at work. My flashlight beam caught something else. A small window near the ceiling, mostly blocked by an old bookshelf. If I could climb up, but as I moved closer, I noticed the window had been painted shut recently. The paint was still tacky in spots. This wasn't an impulsive act. Madison had planned this. I sank down onto a dusty box, my mind racing. All those little incidents over the past months, my missing car keys, the accidentally deleted work presentations, the rumors at Daniel's office party, they weren't random acts of teenage rebellion. This was calculated, methodical. The flashlight flickered, and something inside me hardened. Fine. If Madison wanted to play games, I could play too. But unlike her, I had years of experience in the corporate world, where destroying someone required precision, patience, and most importantly, plausible deniability. I heard the front door close upstairs. Rachel was gone. I was alone in the dark with my thoughts and a growing sense of purpose. Game on, Madison. Game on. Daniel found me 3 hours later, huddled in a corner of the basement, my flashlight dead. His face twisted with concern as he helped me up the stairs. But it wasn't me he rushed to check on first. "Madison, sweetheart." His footsteps thundered up to the second floor, while I stood in the kitchen, still shaking, still tasting dust in my mouth. "I'm fine, Dad," Madison called down, her voice honey-sweet. "Just finishing my homework." I gripped the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. The lies came so easily to her, wrapped in teenage innocence and practiced charm. When Daniel returned, he wrapped his arms around me, but his eyes were distant, already processing how to minimize this latest misunderstanding. "The door must have stuck again," he said, rubbing my shoulders. "I'll have someone look at it this weekend." "The door didn't stick," I said, stepping away from his embrace. "Madison locked me in there, on purpose." His sigh felt like a knife between my ribs. "Sienna, honey, I know things have been challenging, but Madison wouldn't do that." Shadow, our black cat, wound between my legs, purring, At least someone in this house was on my side. Have you even asked her? She's been in her room all afternoon, studying for her chemistry test. He loosened his tie. A gesture I'd learned meant he was done discussing the topic. Maybe you should lie down. You look pale. The doorbell rang before I could respond. Through the front window, I spotted Rachel's car. She must have come back, worried when I didn't answer her texts. Madison appeared at the top of the stairs, as if summoned. I'll get it. No, I said, my voice sharper than intended. I'll get it. But Madison was already halfway down, shooting me a look that said she knew exactly what would happen if I tried to tell Rachel the truth. She'd twist it, like she always did, make me sound paranoid, unstable, the crazy stepmother trying to come between a father and his daughter. Rachel's smile faltered when she saw my face. Sienna, are you okay? I stopped by earlier, but she was running errands. Madison cut in smoothly. Right, Sienna? I felt Daniel's presence behind me, waiting to see how I'd handle this. One wrong move, and I'd be the villain in tonight's dinner conversation. Again. Right, I forced myself to say. Sorry about that, Rachel. I should have texted. Rachel's nurse's instincts kicked in. I could see it in the way her eyes narrowed, assessing me. Well, I brought that book you wanted to borrow. Mind if I come in for a minute? Actually, Madison piped up. We were just about to have a family dinner. Dad promised to help me with my chemistry homework after. Daniel's hand squeezed my shoulder. Rain check, Rachel. I watched my best friend leave, taking with her my chance to expose Madison's true nature. Through the window, I saw our neighbor Ethan walking his dog, pausing to wave at Rachel's retreating car. He glanced up at our house, and for a moment, our eyes met. Something in his expression suggested he'd witnessed more than he let on. I'm starving, Madison announced, heading for the kitchen. Sienna, didn't you say you were going to make that pasta thing tonight? My hands clenched into fists. The pasta thing, the recipe she'd specifically requested this morning, knowing exactly how her afternoon plans would unfold. I need to check something for work, I said, heading for the stairs. You two go ahead. In our bedroom, I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document, started typing. Every incident, every misunderstanding, every manipulative moment since I'd married Daniel 6 months ago. Times, dates, witnesses, the paint on the basement window, Rachel's visit, Ethan's knowing look. Madison wanted to play chess, fine, but she'd forgotten something crucial about me. Before I met Daniel, I'd spent 15 years in corporate marketing, where documenting everything wasn't paranoia, it was survival. Sienna, Daniel called up. You coming down? I saved the document and named it Insurance. Be right there, I called back, a plan already forming in my mind. Madison might have Daniel wrapped around her finger, but she'd made a critical mistake today. She'd shown her hand too soon. And I'd learned long ago that the best revenge isn't served hot or cold. It's served with a smile and impeccable documentation. The email from my boss arrived during dinner. Another presentation corrupted, another deadline missed. My hands trembled as I read it on my phone under the table. Madison's voice chattering about her day, providing perfect cover. And then Jessica said the funniest thing about Sienna's outfit at the school fundraiser last week. My head snapped up. What fundraiser? The conversation screeched to a halt. Daniel's fork paused halfway to his mouth. The one you promised to help organize, Madison said, eyes wide with practiced innocence. Everyone was asking where you were. I had to tell them you forgot. I never promised. I stopped remembering the deleted calendar entries I discovered last week, the missing emails, the convenient, technical glitches that seemed to follow me lately. It was pretty embarrassing, Madison continued, picking at her salad. Mrs. Peterson said maybe you were still adjusting to family life. Daniel cleared his throat. Madison, that's enough. But it wasn't enough, not anymore. Show me your phone, he said, spisket. Madison clutched her phone closer. Show me your phone right now. Dad, she turned to Daniel, tears already welling up. She's being crazy again. Sienna. Daniel's voice carried that warning tone I'd grown to hate. Let's not. A notification pinged on my laptop upstairs. Another email. Probably another crisis. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against hardwood. I need some air. Outside, the evening air felt thick with unspoken accusations. I walked to the end of our driveway, then kept walking, my heels clicking against pavement like a metronome, counting down to disaster. Rough night, I startled. Ethan stood in his front yard, garden hose in hand, though his flowers looked thoroughly watered. Just family dinner theater, I said, aiming for lightness and missing by miles. Interesting performance the other day, he said, eyes sharp, despite his casual tone. When Madison told your friend you weren't home, my breath caught. You saw that. I see a lot from my office window. He coiled the hose slowly, like how your stepdaughter seems to have a habit of going through your car when you're not around. The missing presentation files, the corrupted emails, the calendar chaos. Why are you telling me this? Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say I recognized the signs. My ex-wife's daughter had similar hobbies. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Daniel, come home, we need to talk. Careful, Ethan called as I turned to leave. Teenagers like Madison? They're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Back home, Daniel waited in his study. Madison's crying echoed from upstairs, a performance worthy of Broadway. This has to stop, he said, rubbing his temples. These accusations, this paranoia. Check her phone, I interrupted. Just check her phone, Daniel. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize. She's 16. She deserves privacy. And I deserve not to have my career sabotaged. Shadow leaped onto the desk between us, tail twitching. In the silence that followed, Madison's sobs grew louder, more theatrical. I think, Daniel said carefully, maybe you should stay with Rachel for a few days. Clear your head. Something snapped inside me. You want me to leave? Just temporarily, until things calm down. I laughed, a harsh sound that made Shadow's ears flatten. Things won't calm down, Daniel. They'll get worse, because that's exactly what she wants. His face hardened. That's enough. No, it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. I moved toward the door, then stopped. But it will be. Upstairs, Madison's crying ceased abruptly. In that moment of silence, I made my decision. Ethan was right. This was chess, not checkers, and I just spotted my opponent's weakness. I'll pack a bag, I said, watching Daniel's shoulders sag with relief. But first, I need to send a work email. He nodded, already reaching for his phone to comfort his daughter. In our bedroom, I opened my laptop and created a new email address. Then I started typing. Dear Mrs. Peterson, I recently learned about the fundraiser incident and wanted to clarify something. Madison wanted to play, fine, but she'd forgotten something crucial about chess. Sometimes the queen has to leave the board to win the game. Rachel's guest room felt like exile, but it gave me space to think. 3 days had passed since Daniel suggested I clear my head, and my phone remained silent except for work emails, each one a fresh disaster I couldn't quite prove was Madison's doing. You need to eat something, Rachel said, setting down a plate beside my laptop. The smell of toast turned my stomach. I found something, I said instead, turning the screen toward her. Look at these timestamps. Rachel leaned in, squinting at the email logs. Every corrupted file, every missed meeting. They all happened when Madison was supposedly at debate team practice. Which means there is no debate team this semester. I checked with the school. The doorbell interrupted Rachel's response. Through the window, I spotted Ethan on the porch, holding what looked like a manila envelope. I have something you need to see, he said when Rachel let him in. His usual casual demeanor was gone, replaced by something harder. But first, you need to tell me exactly what happened the day your predecessor left the company. My throat went dry. What? He pulled out several printed pages, because according to these, Sarah Jenkins didn't just quit. She had a complete breakdown after her stepdaughter accused her of harassment. The toast in my stomach turned to lead. How did you... I do background checks for a living, Ethan said. And Madison's mother didn't just leave town for a fresh start, like Daniel claims. She fled after similar accusations from another teenager at her workplace. Rachel's hand on mine, squeezing tight. Sienna, what aren't you telling us? My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Madison's crying again. When are you coming home? It's a pattern, Ethan continued, laying out more papers. 3 women before you, all stepmothers, all professionally discredited, all gone within a year. But why would Daniel? Rachel started. Because he gets to play the hero, I whispered, pieces clicking into place. The devoted father protecting his daughter, the understanding husband supporting his unstable wife. My phone buzzed again. Madison this time. I miss you, maybe I overreacted. The perfect trap. Return home and face more sabotage, or stay away and prove I'm abandoning my family. There's more, Ethan said quietly. Your company's HR department received an anonymous complaint yesterday about inappropriate behavior toward a minor. The room spun. Rachel cursed, but I barely heard her. All I could see was Madison's innocent smile, her perfectly crafted tears, her father's concerned frown, as he suggested I take some time away. My phone lit up with another text from Daniel. We should talk. Come home tonight? Don't, Rachel said, reading my expression. Sienna, whatever you're thinking. But I was already grabbing my coat. I need to get something from the house, just one thing. It's a trap, Ethan warned. Once those accusations hit, I know, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But my laptop's still there, with everything I've documented, everything I've backed up, including emails I'd never sent. Insurance, I'd called it. Now it looked more like survival. I'll go with you, Rachel offered. No. I checked my phone one last time. Daniel's last message glowed. Madison's making your favorite dinner. I need to do this alone, I said, thinking of the basement, of locked doors and painted windows, of a teenager who'd learned too well how to destroy lives while keeping her hands clean. But Madison had made one crucial mistake. She thought she was playing against another Sarah Jenkins, another woman who'd break and run when the accusations flew. She didn't realize she was playing against someone who'd spent 15 years documenting everything, who knew exactly how to make evidence disappear or appear. If I'm not back in an hour, I told Ethan, send everything you found to these email addresses. I scribbled down 3 contacts, my lawyer, my boss, and most importantly, Mrs. Peterson from the school board. Rachel grabbed my arm. What are you going to do? I thought of my hidden files, of Madison's careful manipulations, of Daniel's practiced concern. I'm going to teach my stepdaughter a lesson about karma, I said, stepping into the gathering dark. And this time, I'm not the one who's going to disappear. The house key felt heavy in my hand as I stood on my own doorstep, watching shadows move behind the curtains. Madison's favorite dinner, Daniel had said, as if pasta could erase weeks of calculated destruction. Shadow wound between my legs as I entered, his purr a warning rather than a welcome. The laptop was upstairs in my office, assuming Madison hadn't already gotten to it. Sienna? Daniel's voice from the kitchen. Is that you? I kept my footsteps silent on the stairs, counting seconds. 3 minutes to grab the laptop, 2 to transfer the files, 1 to, I knew you'd try something like this. Madison stood in my office doorway, my laptop open on her lap. Her smile reminded me of a documentary I'd once watched about predators. That's private property, I said, my voice steadier than my hands. Like Sarah Jenkins' private emails? She turned the screen toward me. The ones where she begged Dad not to believe the lies? Or maybe Catherine Mill's resignation letter, the one she wrote right before her nervous breakdown. Each name hit like a slap. How long have you been planning this? Since Dad first mentioned you. She set the laptop down carefully. You seemed smarter than the others, though. I actually had to work for this one. Footsteps on the stairs, Daniel coming to complete their performance. I found something interesting, Madison continued, pulling up a document. Your little insurance file, the one documenting everything? Her fingers danced across the keyboard. It's amazing how easy it is to edit metadata. to make it look like someone's been fabricating evidence for months. The footsteps grew closer. "Why?" I whispered. "What did I ever do to you?" "I did it." "To me?" She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Nothing. That's not the point. It's what you did to Dad. Made him think he needed someone else. Made him forget about Mom. Your mother left because you people always leave." Her mask slipped just for a moment. "But Dad stays. He always stays with me." Daniel appeared in the doorway, his concerned expression so perfectly rehearsed, it made my stomach turn. "Everything okay up here?" he asked, as if he hadn't heard every word. Madison's tears appeared on cue. "I was just trying to apologize, Dad, but she started accusing me again." I looked between them, father and daughter, their routine polished by practice. How many times had they performed this play? How many women had stood where I stood, realizing too late they were never meant to have a permanent role? But I wasn't Sarah Jenkins or Catherine Mills. I pulled out my phone, dialed without looking, put it on speaker. "Ethan Carter Investigations," the voice answered. "This call is being recorded." Madison's tears dried instantly. Daniel stepped forward, but I held up my hand. "Would you mind sharing what you found about the Jenkins case?" I asked, watching their faces. "And the Mills case? And especially about Madison's mother?" "Sienna." Daniel's voice dropped to a warning growl. "Think carefully about what you're doing." "The files are already sent," I said, though my heart hammered. "To my lawyer, my boss, and Mrs. Peterson. Everything, including the basement incident." Madison's mask cracked further. "You're lying." "Check your email, Mr. Taylor," Ethan's voice cut in. "You'll find everything there, including some interesting financial records. Seems paying off previous stepmothers leaves quite a paper trail." The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Madison laughed, not her usual calculated giggle, but something wild and sharp. "It doesn't matter," she said. No one will believe you. They never do." "They might not believe me," I agreed, reaching for my laptop, "but they'll believe the recordings. The ones from every room in this house, including your little confession just now." Daniel lunged for the laptop, but I was faster. Years of corporate politics had taught me one crucial lesson: always have a backup plan. "One more step," I warned, "and everything goes public. Every case, every payoff, every carefully orchestrated breakdown. How many careers have you destroyed, Madison? How many lives?" She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Your move," I said softly. "But remember, I'm not playing chess anymore. I'm burning the whole board." The school board meeting room felt like a courtroom, with Mrs. Peterson's disapproving stare serving as judge and jury. My evidence lay scattered across the table: emails, recordings, financial records, but Madison's tearful performance was stealing the show. "I just wanted a mother," she sobbed, Daniel's arm protectively around her shoulders. But she kept trying to turn everyone against me. I watched the board members exchange glances, their sympathy clearly lying with the traumatized teenager rather than the unstable stepmother. Even my recordings worked against me. Madison's confession twisted into the desperate acts of a scared child, protecting herself from an obsessive adult. "Mrs. Taylor," Mrs. Peterson adjusted her glasses. "These accusations are very serious, but what concerns us more is your apparent fixation on documenting a minor's private moments." "Private moments?" My laugh sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "She locked me in a basement. She sabotaged my career. She created a cry for help," Daniel interrupted smoothly. "One we clearly missed, caught up in our own concerns about your stability." The trap snapped shut with brutal efficiency. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered now looked like proof of my own obsession. Every recording painted me as the unstable one. Even Ethan's investigation backfired. What kind of person hired a private investigator to spy on their teenage stepdaughter? "I have statements," Daniel continued, sliding a folder forward, "from Sarah Jenkins and Catherine Mills about similar patterns of behavior." My blood ran cold. Of course he'd contacted them. Of course they'd back his story. Anything to stay buried, to keep their own broken pieces hidden. That's not, I started, but Madison's next performance cut me off. I should have told someone sooner, she whispered, tears perfectly timed. About the cameras, the stalking, how she'd follow me to school events pretending to be involved. The school board secretary was taking notes, each tap of her keyboard, another nail in my professional coffin. I looked around the room, searching for one sympathetic face, but found only judgment and disgust. My phone buzzed. Rachel, probably wondering why I hadn't answered her warnings about this meeting being a mistake. Beside her name, I spotted an email notification from my boss regarding your immediate termination. Given the severity of these concerns, Mrs. Peterson said, we'll be recommending a full investigation and temporary restraining order. You can't. It's for the best, honey, Daniel said, his concern so convincing I almost believed it myself. We can get you help. Real help this time. Madison buried her face in his shoulder, but not before I caught her smile. The same one she'd worn in the basement, watching me pound on a locked door. I have proof, I insisted, my voice cracked. The basement door, it was painted shut. There are witnesses. You mean Mr. Carter? Daniel pulled out another document. Your private investigator's license was revoked last year. Something about harassment charges from his own stepdaughter situation. The final piece clicked into place. Ethan hadn't been helping me. He'd been setting me up, another player in Madison's elaborate game. If you'll excuse us, Daniel stood, gathering Madison close. My daughter's been through enough today. I watched them leave, Madison's tears had already dried, her performance complete. Through the window, I spotted Ethan waiting in his car, a silent reminder that I'd never really had allies, only carefully placed props in someone else's story. Mrs. Peterson cleared her throat. Mrs. Taylor, given these developments, we strongly suggest you seek professional help and stay away from Madison. My evidence sat useless on the table, transformed from ammunition into proof of my own unraveling. Every move I'd made, every precaution I'd taken, had been anticipated and turned against me. You don't understand, I whispered, but the room was already emptying, leaving me alone with the ruins of my reputation and career. My phone buzzed again, an email from Daniel's lawyer this time. Divorce papers, probably, the final act in Madison's carefully orchestrated destruction. I'd thought I was burning the chessboard, but I'd never been a player at all. Just another piece to be sacrificed in Madison's game. My moves predicted and countered before I'd even made them. The question wasn't how to win anymore. The question was whether I had anything left to lose. Rachel's spare bedroom had become my war room, walls covered with printouts and photos. 3 weeks since the school board meeting, and I'd finally found what I was looking for. In Daniel's banking records, of all places. My phone buzzed. Madison. Miss you, Sienna. Dad says you can come home if you agree to counseling. I ignored it, focusing on the document in front of me. Regular payments to a private account, starting exactly when Madison's mother disappeared. Not alimony, not child support, something else. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I spotted Daniel's car in the driveway. You shouldn't be here, I said through the crack in the door. Madison's in trouble, he replied, his face drawn. Real trouble, she needs you. I almost laughed. Like Sarah Jenkins needed you, or Catherine Mills, or Madison's mother? His expression shifted, something darker replacing the practiced concern. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I held up my phone. I do. I found her, Daniel. Madison's mother? She's not living her best life in California, like you told everyone. She's in a psychiatric facility in Oregon, under a different name, paid for by you. The mask slipped completely. You had no right. To what? Investigate why 3 women before me had mental breakdowns, why they all claimed Madison was destroying their lives, right before being diagnosed with paranoid delusions? A car door slammed behind him. Madison emerged, her usual perfect composure cracking around the edges. You're supposed to be gone, she spat. They all leave, that's how it works. Madison, Daniel warned, but she was already pushing past him into the house. You ruined everything, She grabbed the nearest paper from my wall, tearing it down. "We were happy before you came, before all of them came. Were you?" I kept my voice steady. "Or were you just better at hiding it then?" She whirled on me, tears replaced by something feral. "You don't understand. None of you understood. He's mine." "Madison, stop!" Daniel reached for her, but she shoved him away. "You promised," she screamed at him. "You promised after Mom that you would just be us. But you kept bringing them home, trying to replace her." The pieces clicked into place. Not just a jealous daughter, a traumatized child, enabled by a father too guilty to set boundaries. Each new wife a fresh target for Madison's rage. Each breakdown carefully orchestrated to maintain their dysfunctional dynamic. "Your mother's not gone because she abandoned you," I said softly. "She's gone because she saw what you were becoming, what your father was letting you become." Madison lunged, but I was ready. The phone in my hand was still recording, still broadcasting live to Rachel's laptop downstairs, to my lawyer's email, to Mrs. Peterson. "Tell them," I demanded as Daniel tried to separate us. "Tell them how you did it, how you made each of us look crazy, how your father helped cover it up." "You don't know anything." But her voice cracked, the perfect performance finally faltering. "Meg, I know about the payments, the facility, the NDAs they all signed." I turned to Daniel. "How long before Madison turns on you too? When you eventually try to date again? When you can't meet her demands?" "That's enough," he growled. But Madison was already backing away, her carefully constructed world unraveling. "You said no one would find out," she whispered to her father. "You promised they'd think Mom just left." Daniel's face went pale. "Maddie, honey, I did it for you." Her voice rose hysterically. "All of it. The basement, the emails, making them look crazy, just like you said Mom was crazy, so they'd leave us alone." The front door opened. Rachel stood there, her phone displaying the live recording. Behind her, Mrs. Peterson and 2 police officers. Madison's scream of rage would have been theatrical if it hadn't been so real this time. As the officers stepped forward, I saw her mask crack completely, revealing the broken child beneath the manipulator. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure to whom: the traumatized teenager, the enabler father, or the women before me who hadn't escaped the basement's shadows. Sometimes winning feels exactly like losing. But as they led Madison and Daniel away, I realized this was never about winning. It was about breaking the cycle, even if it meant breaking everything else along with it. The basement door creaked as I pushed it open, dust motes dancing in the beam of my flashlight. 6 months of legal battles, therapy sessions, and sleepless nights had led me back here to where it all began. Shadow wound between my legs as I descended the stairs, each step solid now that Daniel had removed the loose boards. Evidence for the investigation, they'd called it. Evidence of a family's slow collapse. "You don't have to do this," Rachel said from the top of the stairs. "The realtor can handle everything." But I did have to do this. The house would sell tomorrow, and I needed to face these shadows one last time. My flashlight caught the window, still painted shut, though investigators had photographed it extensively. Madison's first confession had opened a flood of revelations. Daniel's careful documentation of each wife's instability, the coordinated gaslighting, the way father and daughter had perfected their routine through years of practice. A newspaper clipping fluttered from between 2 boxes. Madison's tearful interview about her mother's abandonment. The truth had been harder to swallow. A woman who'd seen the darkness growing in her daughter, who'd tried to get her help, only to be labeled paranoid and dangerous by her own husband. "Found something?" Rachel called down. "Just ghosts," I answered, moving deeper into the basement. My phone buzzed. Another email from Madison's therapist, requesting a meeting. I'd declined the previous 3. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, shouldn't be rebuilt. The last time I'd seen Madison, being led away in handcuffs, she'd looked so young, so broken. But I'd seen the calculation behind her tears, even then. A soft thump made me turn. Shadow had knocked over a box, spilling photos across the floor. I knelt to gather them, freezing when I recognized the faces. Daniel's previous wives, all smiling, all unaware of what awaited them, each photo carefully dated, documented, like exhibits in a case that would never see trial. Sienna, a new voice from upstairs. You okay down there? Ethan, not the ally I'd thought, but not quite the enemy either. His own stepdaughter had reached out during the investigation, sharing a similar story of manipulation and gaslighting. He'd been trying to warn me, in his way, though his methods had nearly destroyed me. Almost done, I called back, but my hand shook as I picked up the final photo. Madison and Daniel, taken just days before I'd moved in. Their smiles held secrets I hadn't been equipped to read. Something scratched inside the wall. Shadow's ears perked up, his tail puffing. I shifted my flashlight beam, catching a glimpse of movement through a crack in the foundation. The basement had always held secrets, but some were better left buried. I gathered the photos and documents, more evidence for the growing case file. Daniel's trial would start next month, though Madison's juvenile hearings had already begun. Their perfect facade had crumbled, revealing the rot beneath. Ready? Rachel asked as I emerged, blinking in the bright light of the kitchen. Almost. I moved through the house one last time, Shadow at my heels. Each room held memories of a life I'd tried to build, of a family that had never really existed. In my office, I retrieved the final item, my laptop, still containing the recordings that had exposed everything. At the front door, I paused. The house felt different now, its shadows less threatening, its secrets laid bare. But as I turned to leave, Shadow suddenly hissed, his gaze fixed on something upstairs. I followed his line of sight to Madison's bedroom window. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw a face, young, tear-streaked, calculating. But it was just a trick of the light, a reflection of what I'd learned about family, about revenge, about the fine line between justice and destruction. Goodbye, Shadow, I whispered, but he'd already slipped away into the darkness of the house, choosing to keep his own counsel about which secrets to keep and which to reveal. I locked the door one final time, leaving the key under the mat for the realtor. As I walked away, I didn't look back at the house or its basement full of shadows. Some stories don't need an ending to be finished. They just need fame, just need to be survived.
The scent of lavender and sandalwood fills my studio as 20 bodies move in synchronized breath, following my lead through the final sun salutation. Peace radiates through the room, except for one corner where tension crackles like static electricity. "This is ridiculous," Margaret whispers loudly to her neighbor. "Did you hear what they're saying about her online?" I maintain my serene expression, guiding the class into Savasana, but my stomach clenches. 3 months of marriage, and already my mother-in-law's whisper campaign is seeping into my sanctuary. "Release any remaining tension," I instruct, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "Let go of thoughts that no longer serve you." If only I could follow my own guidance. Instead, my mind races back to last Sunday's brunch, where Catherine's perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around her mimosa glass as she delivered her latest barb. "Darling," she'd said to Ryan, completely ignoring my presence, "I do worry about Adriana's business model. Charging premium rates while offering private sessions to married men? People talk, you know." The class ends and students roll up their mats. Margaret and her friend hurry out, whispering behind their hands. I busy myself adjusting props, pretending not to notice. "Hey." Lily, my best friend and studio manager, appears at my side. "Don't let them get to you. Catherine's just jealous because you actually built something meaningful here." I force a smile. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. I saw your hands shaking during tree pose." "Did anyone else notice?" "No, but..." My phone buzzes. A text from Ryan. "Mom's coming for dinner. Says she has something important to discuss." Shit. The word escapes before I can catch it. Lily reads over my shoulder. "Cancel it. Say you're sick." "And prove her right about me being unsuitable for her precious son?" I shake my head. "No way." "Then let me help you prepare. I've got this." I straighten my spine, channeling the strength I encourage in my students. It's just dinner. But 6 hours later, as Catherine sits at my dining table examining the wine label with barely concealed disdain, I realize how naive that thought was. "Local wine?" She sets the bottle down like it might bite. "How quaint." Ryan squeezes my hand under the table. "It's actually quite good, Mom. Adriana has excellent taste." In some things, perhaps. Catherine's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Speaking of taste, I received some concerning information today about the studio. My fork freezes halfway to my mouth. What kind of information? Ryan asks. Well, Catherine dabs her lips with her napkin. It seems there are some rather unsavory rumors circulating about inappropriate relationships with clients. The salmon turns to ash in my mouth. That's absolutely false. Of course you'd say that, dear, but where there's smoke... She pulls out her phone. These reviews are quite specific. Dates, times, names. Ryan releases my hand. Names? All married men, Catherine adds helpfully. I'm only bringing this up because I care about both of you. Your reputation, Ryan. The family name. Those reviews are fake, I say, but my voice sounds distant even to my own ears. Someone's trying to sabotage my business. Why would anyone do that? Catherine's concern is perfectly practiced. Unless what? Ryan's voice has that edge I've never heard before. I stand up suddenly, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. Adriana, Ryan calls after me, but I'm already heading for the balcony. Outside, the city lights blur through my tears. Behind me, I hear Catherine's soft voice. I hate to be the one to tell you this, son, but there's more. My fingers grip the railing until my knuckles turn white. In this moment, watching my carefully built life begin to crumble, something shifts inside me. The peaceful yoga instructor who preaches forgiveness and harmony fades away, replaced by something harder, colder. Catherine wants war? Fine. But she has no idea what I'm capable of when pushed too far. I take one deep breath, straighten my shoulders, and turn back toward the dining room. Game on, mother dear, game on. I delete another 1-star review from my studio's page, my hands trembling with rage. That makes 7 this week. Each one mentioning inappropriate behavior with male clients. Each one worded just differently enough to seem legitimate. You need to see this, Lily says, pushing her laptop across my desk. She's pulled up the local community Facebook group where Catherine holds court like some digital queen bee. She's getting bolder. The post makes my blood run cold. Concerned about the predatory behavior at certain wellness establishments in our community. As a former educator, I feel compelled to warn others. My phone buzzes. Ryan. Mom's worried about you, says you're not returning her calls. Can we talk? Delete it, I tell Lily, pushing back from my desk. I need air. Outside, I nearly collide with Ethan, Ryan's younger brother, who's loitering by the studio entrance. Hey, sis, he says, his casual tone setting off warning bells. Got a minute? Actually, it's about Mom. He glances around, lowering his voice. And Ryan. I follow him to the coffee shop next door, where he orders nothing and fidgets with a napkin. Look, he starts. Mom's just trying to protect the family. If you'd just, be more traditional, less independent. Excuse me? Ryan's stressed. The rumors are affecting his work. His boss pulled him aside yesterday. Rumors your mother started. You don't know that. But he won't meet my eyes. Maybe if you sold the studio, focused on being a wife. I stand up so quickly, my chair topples backward. Several heads turn. Did Catherine send you? No, Ryan's my brother. I hate seeing him torn like this. Torn between what? His wife and his mother? There shouldn't even be a choice. My sister Mia's voice cuts through the tension. Everything okay here? She's standing at our table, arms crossed, event planner's tablet tucked under one arm. Her expression is neutral, but I catch the protective edge in her stance. Just a family chat, Ethan says, standing. Think about what I said, Adriana. For Ryan's sake. After he leaves, Mia slides into his vacant seat. Spill. I tell her everything. The reviews, Catherine's post, Ethan's suggestion. Her face darkens with each detail. That manipulative witch, she mutters. You know she's doing this because you threaten her control over Ryan. You're everything she's not. Successful, independent, and apparently predatory. I laugh bitterly. Fight back. I've got dirt on her from planning their country club events. The way she treated the staff, the money that went missing from the charity auction. My phone buzzes again. This time it's a group text from Catherine to the entire family. Dinner at my house tonight. Non-negotiable. Family emergency to discuss. Don't go, Mia says immediately. If I don't, she'll spin it as proof I'm hiding something. I close my eyes, remembering the steel that filled me last night. Besides, maybe it's time to stop playing defense. Back at the studio, I find Lily deep in research mode. You're not going to believe this. she says, spinning her screen toward me. I traced the IP addresses of those negative reviews. 3 of them came from Catherine's house. Can you prove it? Better. I can prove she's been using multiple accounts to harass other businesses too. Anyone she sees as a threat to her social standing. I'm about to respond when Ryan appears in the doorway. The dark circles under his eyes match mine. We need to talk, he says. Lily squeezes my shoulder as she leaves us alone. Ryan paces the small office, running his hands through his hair. My boss called me in again. He starts. The rumors. They're affecting our biggest client. They're threatening to pull their account. Ryan, just tell me the truth. Is there anything to these stories? Anything at all? The question hits like a physical blow. You're actually asking me that? I don't know what to think anymore. Mom wouldn't what? Lie? Manipulate? Destroy someone's reputation? He won't meet my eyes. She says she has proof. In that moment, something inside me hardens completely. You know what? Go to her dinner tonight. Listen to her proof. But remember this moment, Ryan. Remember you chose to believe her over me. He reaches for my hand, but I step back. Adriana, I'll be at dinner too, I say, my voice steady despite my crumbling heart. And I'm bringing proof of my own. Catherine's dining room feels like a courtroom, all polished mahogany and accusation. I sit across from Ryan, the evidence Lily gathered burning a hole in my phone, while Catherine serves her famous pot roast with a side of smug satisfaction. I'm so glad we could all be here, she says, pointedly excluding Mia, who wasn't invited. We need to discuss the situation with the studio. What situation? I keep my voice steady, watching Ryan's face. He studies his plate. The complaints are mounting. Catherine sighs, as if this pains her deeply. 3 more women came to me today, concerned about their husbands' private sessions. Ethan shifts uncomfortably. Maybe we should show them, Catherine interrupts, pulling out a manila folder. The evidence. She spreads photographs across the table. Me with male clients, all perfectly innocent yoga adjustments twisted to look intimate. My hands shake as I recognize the angles, the careful cropping. These are from our security cameras, I say. Someone hacked. A concerned employee sent them to me, Catherine cuts in, along with some rather explicit text messages. Ryan's head snaps up. Messages? Fabricated, I spit out. Just like the reviews from your IP address, Catherine. The room goes still. Catherine's fork pauses halfway to her mouth. I beg your pardon? I pull out my phone, but Ethan suddenly knocks over his wine glass. Red liquid spreads across the table, seeping into the photographs. In the chaos of cleaning up, my phone disappears. Looking for this? Catherine holds up my phone, which somehow ended up on her side of the table. Let's see this evidence of yours. Give it back. The passcode, dear? Mom, Ryan warns, but there's no real force behind it. If you have nothing to hide. Catherine's smile is razor sharp. I stand up slowly. You want to talk about hiding things? Let's discuss the missing charity auction money, or the real reason your last teaching job ended. Color drains from her face. How dare you? Lily's been busy, I continue, heart pounding. Did you know deleted emails are recoverable, Catherine? That digital footprints never really disappear? Ryan. She turns to her son, voice trembling. Are you going to let her threaten me like this? I want to see the messages, Ryan says quietly. The ones you mentioned. Of course. Catherine reaches for her folder, but I'm already moving. Check the metadata, I tell Ryan. The timestamps, the origins. Your mother's quite tech-savvy for someone who claims she can barely use Facebook. Enough. Catherine slams her hand on the table. I tried to handle this privately, but you leave me no choice. Ryan, show her. Ryan pulls out an envelope. The Board of Ethics received a formal complaint. They're investigating the studio. The room spins. What? Multiple witnesses. Catherine adds smoothly, all very concerned about professional boundaries. You did this, I whisper. You orchestrated all of it. I protected my son from a gold digger who... Mom! Ryan stands up. That's enough. But it's not enough. Not nearly. Because I suddenly see something in Catherine's eyes. Not triumph, but fear. She's scared. Of what I might know. Of what I might find. Ryan, I say carefully, ask your mother about November 15th, 1989. Catherine's glass shatters on the floor. What's November 15th? Ethan asks. Nothing, Catherine snaps. An insignificant date. The day everything changed, I say, watching her closely. Isn't that right? The day you made a choice that's haunted you ever since. Get out. Her voice shakes. Get out of my house. Mom? Ryan looks between us. What's she talking about? Ask her, I say, heading for the door. Ask her about the baby she gave away. The one before you. The silence behind me is deafening. I pause in the doorway, turn back one last time. By the way, I have copies of everything, and tomorrow I start fighting back. Outside, my hands shake so badly I can barely call Mia. When she answers, I'm already crying. It's done, I tell her. I dropped the bomb. Come over, she says. Lily's here. We've found something else. Something bigger. I look back at Catherine's house where raised voices now filter through the windows. How much bigger? Remember how Mom always said our parents died in a car crash? My blood runs cold. Yes? Catherine was the principal at their school, and I just found out why they were driving that night. The newspaper clipping trembles in my hands as Mia and Lily hover nearby. Yellowed with age, the headline screams across decades, "Local educator cleared in fatal accident investigation." She was the last person to see them alive, Mia says, her voice hollow. Our parents went to confront her that night about something they'd discovered at the school. Lily taps her laptop screen. The police report mentions missing financial records, but the case was closed within weeks. Catherine's husband was the deputy mayor then. My phone buzzes. Ryan again. 10th missed call since I left the dinner party. I silence it. There's more, Mia continues. Remember that teaching assistant who disappeared the year before? The one Catherine claimed moved to Oregon? A knock at the door makes us all jump. Through the peephole, I see Ethan looking disheveled. Don't, Lily warns, but I'm already opening it. He bursts in. You need to come back. Mom's having some kind of breakdown talking about babies and accidents and... He stops, seeing the newspaper. What's that? Ask your mother, I say. Ask her about Sandra Chen, the teaching assistant who knew too much. His face drains of color. How do you know that name? Because our parents knew it too. Mia steps forward. Right before they died. Ethan sinks onto the couch. The night of the accident, Mom came home late. Her car had a dent. Dad made some calls and everything just went away. My phone lights up again. Not Ryan this time, but Catherine. Put it on speaker, Lily says. Catherine's voice fills the room, raw and desperate. You think you know everything, don't you? But you have no idea what really happened that night. Then tell me. Your parents were going to destroy everything I'd built. They didn't understand the choices I had to make. What choices? Come alone to the school, the old building. I'll show you exactly what happened 25 years ago. The line goes dead. It's a trap, Lily says immediately. Obviously, I agree. But she's unraveling. This might be our only chance to get the truth. I'm calling Ryan, Ethan stands. No, I grab his arm. Your mother's spent decades building walls of lies. If Ryan shows up, she'll just construct another one. Then I'm coming with you, Mia insists. I shake my head. She'll only talk if I'm alone, but I need you to do something else. I outline my plan quickly, watching understanding dawn in their eyes. That's brilliant, Lily whispers, and terrifying. If I'm not back in 2 hours, we'll have everything ready, Mia promises. The drive to the old school building feels like entering another dimension. Catherine stands in the shadows of the entrance, looking smaller somehow, more fragile. I knew you'd come, she says. You're just like them, so righteous, so sure of your moral high ground. Show me. She leads me through dark hallways to the basement. Each step echoes with decades of secrets. Your parents found financial records, she says, voice distant. But they didn't understand. The money wasn't for me. It was for them. Them? The girls. The ones who needed help. Sandra helped arrange everything. Until she wanted more money, started making threats. My blood runs cold. What did you do to her? Catherine laughs, a broken sound. The same thing I did to your parents. The same thing I'll do to you if you don't back off. A door slams behind us. I spin around, heart pounding, but Catherine blocks the exit. You should have taken the hint, she says. Should have just walked away. Now I'll have to explain another tragic accident. Like you explained Sandra's disappearance? Ryan will understand. He always does. Will he understand this? I pull out my phone, the recording light blinking. Behind Catherine, shadows move in the darkness. Now, Mia. The basement floods with light. Ethan and Ryan step out of the shadows, phones raised, recording everything. Mia stands by the stairs, her tablet live streaming to the police. Catherine's face crumples. Ryan, I can explain, but Ryan's eyes are ice. I think you've explained enough, Mom. In the distance, sirens wail. The police interview room feels colder than the basement where Catherine tried to trap me. Detective Morris slides another crime scene photo across the table. My parents' mangled car at the bottom of the ravine. Mrs. Henderson maintains it was an accident, he says, just like she maintains Sandra Chen moved to Oregon. And you believe her? He taps the photo. 25 years of believing doesn't make something true. My phone buzzes. Another message from Ryan. We need to talk, please. Your mother-in-law's political connections won't help her this time, Morris continues. But we need more than circumstantial evidence. What about the financial records? Disappeared, along with everything else from that period. I leave the station feeling hollow. Lily's waiting outside, laptop open. You need to see this. It's a video from Catherine's hearing. She sits perfectly poised, every inch the respected educator. These accusations are absolutely groundless, she tells the judge. Adriana has been unstable since losing her parents. She's fabricating these connections to process her grief. That manipulative... Wait, Lily says. Watch Ethan. Behind Catherine, Ethan shifts uncomfortably, touching his jacket pocket. The same nervous tic from childhood, when he was hiding something. He knows something, I breathe. Better. Lily zooms in. Look what's sticking out of his pocket. A flash of red. The corner of a notebook. My phone rings. Ethan. Don't answer, Lily warns. But I do. Hello? Meet me at the studio. Alone. His voice shakes. Mom doesn't know I kept it. The studio is dark when I arrive. Ethan paces between the yoga mats, jumping at shadows. Show me, I say. He pulls out a red notebook. Sandra's diary. She gave it to me for safekeeping, right before she left. I was just a kid. Didn't understand what it meant until now. I reach for it, but he pulls back. Wait, you need to know. This will destroy everything. Not just Mom, all of us. She killed our parents. And Ryan's father. His words hit like physical blows. The diary. It's all here. The money laundering, the girls she helped, Dad's threats to expose her. The accident that wasn't an accident. My phone buzzes again. Ryan. Always Ryan. He deserves to know, Ethan says. Like you deserve to know? All these years you kept this hidden. I was protecting my family. You were protecting a murderer. The studio door opens. Ryan stands there, face ashen. I heard everything. Ethan stumbles back. How long? Long enough. Ryan moves toward us. The diary. Now. Ryan, I start, but he cuts me off. You don't understand. None of you do. This goes deeper than Mom. What are you talking about? He pulls out his phone, shows us an email. Dad's old partner contacted me. There are people who'll pay to keep this quiet. Enough to set us all up for life. The world tilts sideways. You want to bury this? After everything she's done? I want us to be smart about this. He reaches for me. Think about it. The money, a fresh start. I step back. Our parents deserve justice. Your parents are dead, he snaps. Nothing will bring them back. But we're alive and we have choices. Ethan clutches the diary tighter. We can't. Can't what? Catherine's voice cuts through the darkness. She stands in the doorway, gun trained on the diary. Can't keep family secrets? Can't protect each other? Mom, Ryan breathes. What are you doing? What I've always done. Protecting this family. She steps forward. The diary, Ethan. Now. My phone buzzes one final time. A text from Mia. Police in position. Keep her talking. But as I look at Ryan's conflicted face, at Ethan's trembling hands, at Catherine's unwavering gun, I realize something terrible. I don't know whose side anyone is really on anymore, and the truth might destroy us all. The diary burns in the fireplace while Catherine keeps the gun trained on us. Each curling page takes my parents' justice with it, turning truth to ash. Ryan stands between us, his loyalty finally chosen. It's better this way, he says softly. A clean slate. My wedding ring feels like it's burning my finger. Clean for who? Everyone. Catherine's voice is steady now, confident. The money will be in your account by morning, enough to start fresh somewhere else. You think you can buy my silence after confessing to murder? Confessing? She laughs. There's no evidence, dear, just the ravings of a troubled woman who's clearly having a mental breakdown. Ethan won't meet my eyes. His betrayal stings worse than Ryan's somehow. He had the truth all along, held on to it until it could be used as a bargaining chip. The police, I start. Have nothing, Ryan cuts in. Mom's right, without the diary. My phone buzzes. Mia's message glows. Officers in position, give the signal. But what signal? What proof? I watch another page blacken and curl, taking Sandra's words with it. I've already called Dr. Warner, Catherine continues. He understands you're having episodes, delusions about your parents' accident. He's agreed to help. The implications hit me. You're going to have me committed? For your own good, Ryan says, reaching for my hand. Just until you're better. I jerk away. Don't touch me. See? Catherine sighs. Paranoid, aggressive, classic signs of a breakdown. My studio door opens. Dr. Warner enters with 2 orderlies. Everything's happening too fast. It's okay, Adriana, he says soothingly. We're here to help. This is insane. Mia knows. Your sister's worried about you too. Catherine interjects smoothly. She agrees you need help. My heart stops. What? She called me this morning. She's the one who suggested Dr. Warner. You're lying. But my phone buzzes again. Mia, I'm sorry. It's the only way to keep you safe. The orderlies move closer. Ryan steps aside, his face a mask of concerned betrayal that makes me want to scream. The police, I try again, have been informed of your condition. Dr. Warner says gently. Your recent accusations, the conspiracy theories, they understand. Catherine's smile is triumphant. Sometimes loving someone means protecting them from themselves. The orderlies reach for me. I dodge, but there's nowhere to go. The diary is ash, my allies have turned, and my own sister... Wait, I gasp. My phone, the recording... But Ryan holds up my phone, already factory reset. It's okay, honey. You don't need this right now. No. The word comes out broken as the orderlies grab my arms. You can't. 3 days of observation, Dr. Warner says. Then we'll evaluate. 3 days is plenty, Catherine adds, her meaning clear. Plenty of time to erase whatever's left of the truth. As they drag me toward the door, I lock eyes with Ethan. He looks away, but not before I see it. Guilt, yes, but something else. His hand touches his pocket again, that nervous tick. And suddenly I understand. The diary wasn't the only copy. But it doesn't matter now. The sedative enters my arm, and the world starts to blur. The last thing I see is Ryan's face, full of false concern, as Catherine puts her arm around him. It's for the best, she says, her voice fading. Sometimes family has to make hard choices. Family. The word follows me into darkness, bitter as ash. I thought I was fighting for justice, for truth. Instead, I've lost everything. My husband, my sister, my freedom. Catherine has won, turning everyone against me with a precision that would be admirable if it wasn't destroying my life. As consciousness slips away, one thought remains. Ethan's nervous tick, his pocket. Whatever he's hiding might be my last chance at truth. If I can survive the next 3 days with my sanity intact. The ambulance doors close. Through the window, I watch my studio recede, taking with it everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and justice. But Catherine taught me one thing. Sometimes the best revenge requires patience. And in 3 days, she'll learn just how well I've learned that lesson. If I survive that long. The psychiatric ward's fluorescent lights flicker as Lily helps me into street clothes. 3 days of forced observation have left me hollow, but clear-headed. Maybe too clear. Ethan's waiting in the car, she whispers. Catherine's at the country club for their annual charity gala. And Mia? Already there, with the proof. My hands shake as I button my blouse. You're sure about the USB drive? Ethan kept a digital copy of everything. Sandra's diary, the financial records, even Catherine's private emails about your parents. The ward door opens. Ryan stands there, looking uncertain. The doctor's signing your release papers. Don't, Lily starts, but I touch her arm. It's okay, give us a minute. When we're alone, Ryan steps closer. You look better. Amazing what 3 days of forced sedation can do. Adriana, Save it, you chose your side. His face hardens. I chose family. So did I. Understanding dawns in his eyes. But before he can speak, my phone buzzes. Mia's signal. The gala's starting. The country club ballroom glitters with false pretense. Catherine holds court near the podium, accepting congratulations for another successful fundraiser. When she sees me, her champagne glass freezes halfway to her lips. You're supposed to be committed? I move closer. Sorry to disappoint. Security, she starts, but I cut her off. Before you do that, you might want to look at the screens. Every monitor in the ballroom flickers to life. Sandra Chen's face appears, young and afraid, reading from her diary. Then financial records, photos, email threads. The truth, impossible to ignore. Catherine lunges for the podium microphone, but Mia's faster. Ladies and gentlemen, my sister's voice rings out. I think it's time we learned where last year's missing charity funds really went, and the year before, and about a young teaching assistant who knew too much. You don't understand, Catherine hisses at me. I protected those girls, gave them choices. Like you gave Sandra a choice, my parents? They were going to ruin everything. The crowd murmurs as more evidence fills the screens. Catherine's careful facade crumbles in real time. Turn it off, she demands, but no one moves. Ryan, do something. Ryan steps forward, but not to help her. Is it true about Dad? Your father was weak. He would have destroyed us all. Ethan emerges from the crowd, holding up his phone. I kept everything, Mom, every recording, every confession. You ungrateful. She reaches into her purse. The gun's gone, I tell her quietly. Detective Morris has it, along with your prints from the night my parents died. She backs away, looking for escape, but the crowd has become a wall. Years of manipulation and murder collapse into this single moment of exposure. I did it all for you, she tells Ryan. Everything. Always for you. No, he says. You did it for yourself. Police appear at the doorways. Catherine sees them and something breaks in her eyes. She turns to me, all pretense gone. You think this is justice? She snarls. You've destroyed your marriage, your family. You destroyed those things. I'm just bringing the truth to light. The truth? She laughs, high and broken. You want truth? Ryan's not my only secret child. Ask your sister why she really helped you. My head snaps toward Mia, who's gone pale. That's right, Catherine continues as the police move in. Sandra Chen didn't just disappear. She gave birth first, to a baby girl. Who better to help destroy me than another daughter I threw away? The handcuffs click around Catherine's wrists, but I barely hear the Miranda rights being read. I'm staring at Mia, my sister, my ally, my half-sister. She meets my eyes across the chaos, and in that moment I understand everything. Why she always knew more than she let on. Why she fought so hard to help me expose Catherine. I wanted to tell you, she whispers. The truth crashes over me. Not just justice served, but family redefined. As Catherine is led away, still spitting revelations like venom, I realize revenge wasn't the end I was seeking. It was understanding. And now, standing in the wreckage of exposed secrets, I have to decide what to rebuild from these ashes of truth. The courthouse steps feel colder than they should in spring. Catherine's sentencing ended hours ago, but I can't seem to leave. 25 years for my parents' deaths, plus Sandra's disappearance. Justice, they call it. But justice feels different than I imagined. Here, Mia appears beside me, offering coffee. My sister, Catherine's daughter. The truth still feels raw, even weeks later. Did you know? I ask. Before all this? I found Sandra's letters last year. She left them with my adoptive parents. She sits beside me. That's when I started watching Catherine, gathering evidence. You could have told me. Would you have believed that your sister was really your enemy's daughter? Her smile is sad. I barely believed it myself. Movement catches my eye. Ryan exits the courthouse, Ethan beside him. They pause when they see us, uncertainty hanging between us like smoke. The house sold, Ryan says finally. And the country club membership. Keep it, I tell him. I don't want anything from her. What about this? He holds out a familiar red notebook, the original diary. Found it in Mom's safe. There's more in here, about other children. My stomach turns. How many? Enough to keep the police busy. Ethan takes the notebook. I'll make sure it gets to Detective Morris. Ryan lingers. Adriana, Don't. I stand up. Some betrayals can't be undone. I was trying to protect your family, I know, but I was your family too. He flinches as if I'd struck him. Good. Let him feel something real for once. Lily pulls up in her car, right on time. Ready? I look at the scattered remains of what I once called family. Ryan, who chose loyalty over love. Ethan, finally finding his courage too late. And Mia, my sister in more ways than blood could ever define. The studio reopens tomorrow, I tell them. New name, new start. You're welcome to come, or not. What are you calling it? Ethan asks. Phoenix Rising Wellness, Mia answers for me. Because some things have to burn before they can be reborn. Ryan steps forward. Maybe someday. Someday is too far away, I cut him off. And not far enough. In Lily's car, I watch them shrink in the rearview mirror. 3 figures on courthouse steps, bound by secrets and sins they didn't commit. You never told them, did you? Lily asks quietly. About the other diary? I touch my bag where Sandra's second journal lies hidden, the one containing the names of powerful men who used Catherine's services over the years. My insurance policy, my last piece of leverage. Some truths serve better as shadows, I say, reminders that everyone has something to hide. And some truths set us free, Mia adds from the back seat. I think of Catherine in her prison cell, of Ryan in his empty house, of all the careful lies exposed to sunlight. But I also think of Mia, who chose truth over comfort, and Lily, who never wavered. The studio event tonight, Lily reminds me. Your first class back. You sure you're ready? I close my eyes, feeling the weight of Sandra's second diary, heavy with secrets that could destroy more lives. Revenge brought justice, but at what cost? And what would justice mean for those other names, those other crimes? I'm ready, I say, opening my eyes. But not for a yoga class. Mia leans forward. What then? A support group for survivors of family violence, people who need to tell their stories. Because that's the real power, isn't it? Not revenge, but revelation. Not destruction, but reconstruction. Building something new from the ashes of what burned. Sandra would have liked that, Mia says softly. The sun sets behind us as we drive, painting the sky in colors of fire and rebirth. I think of Catherine's final words in court. I regret nothing. But I do, and I don't. And somehow both are true. Tomorrow, I'll stand before a room of strangers and say, tell me your story. And in their truths, maybe I'll find the final pieces of my own. But for now, I let the sunset burn away the last shadows of what was, making space for what could be. Some phoenixes rise alone, but the strongest ones rise together.
Just sign here, Betty. It's what's best for everyone. My mother's words still echo in my head 15 years later, the memory as sharp as the pen she thrust into my trembling hands that day. I was 23, naive and desperate to prove my love for my family, especially my sister Rose. My name is Betty, and this is the story of how I became both a surrogate and a mother, though not in the way anyone had planned. Think about Rose's career, my mother pressed, pacing our family's sunlit kitchen. She can't risk losing her modeling contracts. You're the only one who can help. She slid the surrogacy agreement across our marble countertop, her manicured nail tapping impatiently against the signature line. Rose sat beside me, her perfect features arranged in a practiced pout. Please, Betty, you know I've always wanted to be a mother, but the timing isn't right with my career taking off. Just carry the babies for me. That's all I'm asking. I stared at the contract, my stomach churning. But why twins? The fertility specialist recommended single embryo transfer. 2 for 1, Rose chirped, as if ordering coffee. More efficient this way. Besides, I've always wanted twins. My father cleared his throat from his position by the window. Betty, your sister has given you everything. Remember who paid for your medical school? Who supported you through every step? It's time to return the favor. The guilt was suffocating. They were right. Rose had helped fund my education when our parents couldn't afford it. I owed her. With shaking fingers, I signed the papers. The pregnancy was surprisingly easy, but something unexpected happened. With each kick, each heartbeat on the monitor, each ultrasound showing 2 perfect little girls, I felt a connection growing stronger than anything I'd ever known. At 7 months, I sat in my small apartment, hands cradling my swollen belly, when Rose visited with a camera crew. What's this? I asked, watching strangers set up lighting equipment in my living room. Just a small documentary piece, Rose waved dismissively, about surrogacy and my journey to motherhood. The agency thinks it'll be great publicity. My stomach clenched, and not from the baby's movement. You didn't ask me about this. Oh, don't be difficult, Rose snapped. Just sit there and look happy. Talk about how blessed you feel to help your sister. That's when it hit me. The years of manipulation, the constant guilt-tripping, the way Rose had held her financial support over my head. These babies, growing inside me, deserved better than to be props in their aunt's publicity stunt. No, I said quietly. What? I said no. I stood up, one hand protectively over my belly. Get out, all of you. Rose's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. Don't be ridiculous. You signed a contract I'm willing to fight in court. My voice grew stronger with each word. These are my babies too. Biologically, legally, I have rights. The aftermath was nuclear. My parents called me selfish, ungrateful, a traitor to the family. Rose threatened lawsuits, though her lawyers later advised against it, something about the contract's validity being questionable. You'll regret this, my mother hissed during our last conversation. You're dead to us, Betty. Dead. I gave birth alone, save for the kind hospital staff. 2 perfect little girls, Ariana and Mary. When I held them for the first time, I knew I'd made the right choice. Their tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and in that moment, I silently promised them something. They would never know manipulation disguised as love. They would never be anyone's props or pawns. My family kept their word. They vanished from my life completely. No cards, no calls, no acknowledgement of the twins' existence. I threw myself into my residency, working double shifts while juggling single motherhood. It was hard, harder than anything I'd ever done. But watching my daughters grow into kind, confident little girls made every sacrifice worth it. I thought I'd closed that chapter of my life forever. I was wrong. 15 years later, fate would prove that some stories refuse to end, and karma has a way of demanding its due. But that day in the hospital, cradling my newborn daughters, I didn't know what was coming. I just knew I was finally free, and that was enough. Mom, you're doing it again, Ariana said, not looking up from her calculus homework. That thing where you stare at your phone instead of eating. I blinked, realizing my breakfast had gone cold. The email from the hospital board was still open on my screen, announcing my promotion to Chief of Pediatric Surgery. After 15 years of grinding, I'd finally reached the summit. Sorry, sweetie. Big news at work. I set my phone down, taking in my kitchen and the 2 teenagers who filled it with life. Mary was perched on the counter, despite my constant reminders not to, while Ariana sat at the table, surrounded by textbooks. Did you finally get that promotion? Mary's eyes lit up. Though identical twins, she and Ariana couldn't be more different. Mary was all spontaneity and creative chaos, while Ariana approached life with methodical precision. Actually, yes, starting next month. Called it, Mary pumped her fist. This calls for celebration. Can we order pizza tonight? On a school night? I raised an eyebrow, but couldn't help smiling. We'll see. Now get off that counter before... My phone buzzed. A text from Evan, my colleague and closest friend at the hospital. Need to talk. ASAP. Your office. Everything okay? Ariana asked, noticing my expression change. Just work stuff. I should head in early. I grabbed my coat, kissing each of them on the head. Remember, Aunt Sarah is picking you up for soccer practice. We're 15, Mom. Mary rolled her eyes. We can take the bus. Humor your overprotective mother, okay? The hospital was already buzzing when I arrived. I spotted Evan pacing outside my office, his usually calm demeanor noticeably rattled. What's wrong? I asked, unlocking the door. He followed me inside, closing the door firmly. You need to sit down for this. Evan, you're scaring me. Your parents are here, in the hospital. They're looking for you. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of my desk, grateful I was already sitting. What? They showed up in administration this morning, asking about you. I overheard because I was dropping off some paperwork. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Betty, there's more. Your sister is with them. Rose? The name felt foreign on my tongue. Why now, after 15 years? They're saying she's sick. Leukemia. Evan's voice softened. From what I gathered, they're looking for a bone marrow donor. A harsh laugh escaped me. Of course. They're not here to reconcile. They need something. You don't have to see them, Evan said firmly. I can have security. Dr. Matthews? My assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. There's a couple here insisting they're your parents. They're quite persistent. I met Evan's concerned gaze. Tell them I'm in surgery. Already did. They said they'll wait. My hands trembled as I reached for my coffee cup. 15 years of silence, and now this? The girls didn't even know they had an aunt, let alone grandparents who'd abandoned them. Whatever you decide, Evan said quietly. I've got your back. But Betty? He waited until I looked at him. Don't let them manipulate you. Not again. The irony is, I said, staring at my office wall where photos of the girls hung. I just got the chief position. Everything was finally perfect. It still is. You're not that same person they pushed around. He squeezed my shoulder. You're Dr. Betty Matthews, chief of pediatric surgery, and one hell of a mother. Remember that. My phone buzzed again, a text from Mary. Forgot my history project. Can you bring it by school? It's on the kitchen table. Love you. Looking at my daughter's message, something hardened inside me. These people might have given me life, but they'd lost the right to be part of it long ago. Whatever they wanted, I wouldn't let it hurt my girls. Tell them, I said into the intercom. I'll give them 15 minutes, not a second more. Evan nodded approvingly. Want me to stick around? No, but stay close. I managed a weak smile, just in case I need backup. As I waited for my parents to be shown in, I straightened my white coat and touched the photo of my girls for luck. Whatever storm was coming, I'd weather it. I had to. I was all my daughters had. And this time, I wasn't some naive 23-year-old they could push around. This time, I was ready. They looked older, of course. My mother's hair had gone completely gray, and my father's shoulders stooped in a way I didn't remember. But the entitled way they swept into my office, as if the last 15 years hadn't happened, was exactly the same. Betty, my mother breathed, moving to hug me. I stepped back. Let's keep this professional. I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. 15 minutes. Is that any way to greet your parents? My father's voice carried that familiar note of disapproval. After everything you did? I cut him off. Yes, actually, it is. Why are you here? They exchanged glances. My mother pulled out her phone, showing me a photo. Rose lay in a hospital bed, her once perfect features gaunt and pale. Your sister needs you. She needs your daughters, my father corrected. Rose has acute myeloid leukemia. She's been through 3 rounds of chemo, but nothing's working. The doctors say her best chance is a bone marrow transplant from a close relative. And you waited until now to reach out? I kept my voice steady. How long has she been sick? 6 months, my mother admitted. We tried everything else first, but 6 months. I let that sink in. So I'm still your last resort. Don't be dramatic, my father snapped. This is your sister's life we're talking about. My sister? I stood up, anger finally breaking through. The same sister who manipulated me into being her surrogate because she didn't want to ruin her modeling career? That sister? That's not fair, my mother protested. Rose was at the peak of her career, and now she's at the bottom of her luck, so you remember I exist? I laughed bitterly. Let me guess, you haven't found any other matches in the donor registry? Their silence was answer enough. The girls, my mother finally said. They're 15 now. We'd like to meet them. Absolutely not. They're Rose's daughters. My father's fist hit my desk. They have a right to know their mother. The words hung in the air like poison. I leaned forward, my voice deadly quiet. I am their mother, the only mother they've ever known or needed, and I have a right to know something too. Was Rose really infertile? They froze. My mother's hand flew to her throat, an old tell I remembered from childhood. I want DNA tests, I continued. Before we discuss anything involving my daughters, I want proof of Rose's biological claim to them. That's ridiculous, my father blustered. The surrogacy agreement? The same agreement your lawyers advised Rose not to enforce? I pulled out a document from my desk drawer. I've kept copies of everything, including the fertility clinic paperwork that seemed oddly vague about certain details. Betty, please, my mother's voice cracked. Rose is dying. And I'm sorry about that, truly, but my daughters aren't bargaining chips. I stood up. If you want to pursue this, we do it my way. Full DNA testing, complete medical history, and legal documentation. Otherwise, there's the door. You've become hard, my father said accusingly. No, I've become strong. There's a difference. I checked my watch. Your 15 minutes are up. My assistant will give you my lawyer's contact information. Any future communication goes through her. They stood slowly, my mother wiping tears I wasn't sure were genuine. At the door, she turned back. Do they know anything about us? They know they're loved. That's all they've ever needed to know. After they left, I sank into my chair, hands shaking. Evan appeared minutes later with coffee. That bad? Worse. I told him everything. Am I wrong to demand the DNA tests? No, he said firmly. You're protecting your kids. But Betty? He hesitated. What if the tests show what you suspect, that Rose was never infertile? I stared at the family photo on my desk. Then 15 years of lies come crashing down, and karma finally comes calling. My phone buzzed, a text from Mary. Thanks for bringing my project. Love you tons. Best mom ever. Looking at those words, I knew I'd walk through fire to protect what I'd built. My daughters deserved the truth, whatever it might be. And if that truth burned down the carefully constructed lies my family had built, well, some things needed to burn. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. It was time to uncover what really happened 15 years ago, no matter the cost. The DNA results arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered to my office in a sealed envelope. I stared at it for an hour before Evan knocked on my door. You haven't opened it yet, have you? He set down 2 cups of coffee and closed the door. I'm afraid, I admitted, pushing the envelope toward him. You do it. He picked it up, carefully breaking the seal. I watched his eyes scan the document, his expression shifting from neutral to shocked. Betty. He looked up. You're the biological mother. Both eggs were yours. The room spun. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing the confirmation knocked the wind out of me. How? They told me they used Rose's eggs. There's more. Evan flipped through the pages. The fertility clinic included their records. The eggs were harvested from you during what they told you was a preparatory procedure. Rose never underwent any fertility treatments there. She lied. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. They all lied. But why? Money, a voice said from the doorway. We both turned to see Sarah, my closest friend and the girl's godmother, standing there. Sorry, I overheard. But think about it. Wasn't Rose's big modeling contract right after? The memories flooded back. Rose's magazine covers, the luxury car, the beach house. All appearing shortly after I'd signed the surrogacy agreement. The pregnancy would have cost her the contract, I whispered, so she used me instead. And your parents helped her do it, Sarah added, her voice hard. Have you told the girls? Not yet. I don't even know how to start that conversation. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Rose is getting worse. Have you made a decision about the girls? I need to tell them tonight, I said, looking at my friends. Before this gets any more complicated. That evening, I gathered Ariana and Mary in our living room. They must have sensed something was wrong because they didn't even argue about putting their phones away. Mom? Ariana's forehead creased with worry. Are you okay? I need to tell you something about your birth. I took a deep breath. You know I was a surrogate, but there's more to the story. I told them everything. About Rose, the manipulation, the contract. When I got to the DNA results, Mary grabbed her sister's hand. So this aunt we've never met? She's not really our mother at all? Mary's voice trembled. You are? Completely? Yes. I watched their faces carefully. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the whole truth before. I thought I was protecting you. From what? Ariana asked quietly. From feeling unwanted. From knowing your aunt and grandparents chose money and career over you. But you didn't, Mary said fiercely. You chose us. Ariana stood up suddenly, pacing the room. They're back, aren't they? That's why you're telling us now. Yes, your Aunt Rose is sick. They want to test you as potential bone marrow donors. No. Ariana's response was immediate. They abandoned us for 15 years. They don't get to use us now. Ari, I said gently, I'm not asking you to decide anything right now. I just needed you to know the truth. I want to meet them, Mary said suddenly. We all turned to look at her. Not to help. I just want to see the people who thought they could throw us away. Mary! Ariana looked shocked. What? Don't you want to look them in the eye? Tell them what they missed? I watched my daughters, Mary's righteous anger, Ariana's protective instincts, and saw myself in both of them. Strong, resilient, unwilling to be manipulated. Whatever you decide, I said carefully, we do it together. No one pressures you. No one makes you feel guilty. Your bodies, your choice. Like it should have been your choice? Ariana asked softly. The question hit me hard. Yes, exactly like that. My phone buzzed again. Evan this time. Your parents are pushing for a meeting with the girls. What do you want me to tell them? Looking at my daughters, I saw the same strength that had helped me defy my family 15 years ago. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. Mom? Mary's voice pulled me back. We're okay. Really. You're our mother, the only one we need or want. Ariana nodded. And whoever these people are, they'll have to go through you to get to us. I pulled them both into a hug, marveling at how karma had given me the greatest gift of all. 2 daughters who were as fierce and protective of me as I was of them. Now it was time to face my family with the truth. All of it. You've got everything? Evan asked, reviewing the documents spread across my office desk. DNA results, original fertility clinic paperwork, Rose's modeling contracts from that year. Plus the emails I saved between Rose and her agent discussing the pregnancy problem. I tapped the final folder. Found those while cleaning out my old laptop last night. She used my email to communicate with them because she was paranoid about leaks to the press. Careless of her, Sarah commented from her perch on my office couch, almost like she never expected you to stand up for yourself. The intercom buzzed. Dr. Matthews, your family is here. Show them in. I straightened my lab coat. You 2 don't have to stay. Try making us leave, Sarah replied, while Evan just crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. My parents entered first, followed by Rose in a wheelchair. She looked worse than her photo. Skin pale as paper, designer scarf wrapped around her bare head. A pang of sympathy hit me before I remembered why we were here. Betty, Rose's voice was weak. Thank you for seeing us. Sit, I gestured to the chairs. We need to talk about the DNA results. We don't need, my father started, but I cut him off. Actually, we do, because they show something interesting. I opened the folder. The twins? They're mine. Biologically mine. Both eggs were harvested from me. The color drained from my mother's face. Rose gripped her wheelchair arms. That's impossible, my father blustered. The clinic kept excellent records. I pulled out more documents, including the consent forms that were forged with my signature. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Betty, please, Rose wheezed. I'm dying. Yes, you are, and I'm sorry about that. But it doesn't change what you did. I turned to my parents. Did you know about the fake infertility? My mother's silence was damning. Of course they knew, Sarah spoke up from the couch. They probably helped plan it. The timing was too perfect with Rose's contract renewal. $3 million, I said quietly. That's what the contract was worth, right, Rose? The one you couldn't risk losing by getting pregnant? You don't understand, Rose whispered. My career was everything. And my daughters were nothing? I stood up. You let me believe for 15 years that I was just an incubator. You made me feel guilty for wanting my own children. We did what was best for the family, my father insisted. Best for Rose, you mean? Evan's voice was cold. Like always. I pulled out one final document. This is a restraining order. My lawyer filed it this morning. You don't contact me, my daughters, or anyone associated with us. You can't do this. My mother shot to her feet. Rose needs to live with her choices. I met my sister's desperate gaze, just like I've lived with mine. They're my daughters, too. Rose tried to stand but stumbled. Our father caught her. No, they're not. Legally, morally, or biologically, they're mine, and they know everything now. You told them? My mother's voice rose. How could you? Because, unlike you, I don't build relationships on lies. I pressed the intercom. Security will escort you out. Any further communication goes through my lawyer. Betty. Rose reached for my hand. I stepped back. Please, I'm scared. For a moment, I saw my sister as she used to be, before the modeling, before the lies, the girl who used to read me bedtime stories and braid my hair. But that sister was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I hope you find a donor match, Rose. I really do, but it won't be my daughters. Security arrived to escort them out. As they left, my mother turned back. You'll regret this. When Rose dies, I interrupted. It will be sad, but my conscience will be clear. Can you say the same? After they left, Sarah and Evan moved to my side. You okay? Evan squeezed my shoulder. No, I admitted. But I will be. My phone lit up with a text from Mary. Mom, Ari, and I made dinner. Well, we ordered pizza. Same thing, right? Love you. Looking at that message, I felt the weight of 15 years lift from my shoulders. The truth was finally out. The lies were exposed. And somewhere in the universe, karma was nodding in approval. Come on, Sarah grabbed my purse. Let's get you home to those amazing daughters of yours. Amazing indeed. And completely, undeniably, mine. The next morning, I found Ariana and Mary waiting in the kitchen, still in their pajamas despite it being nearly noon on a Saturday. We want to meet them, Ariana announced without preamble. Both of us, Mary added. We talked about it all night. I set down my coffee mug. Are you sure? You don't owe them anything. We know, Ariana said, but we want to look them in the eye, show them what they threw away. Mary nodded. Plus, I have some choice words for Aunt Rose about using you like that. Mary! I couldn't help but smile. No choice words necessary, but if you're sure about this... We are, they said in unison. 2 hours later, we sat in a private hospital conference room. Evan had arranged it, insisting on neutral ground. He stood by the door like a sentinel while Sarah sat beside me for moral support. When my parents entered with Rose, Mary grabbed my hand under the table. Ariana sat straighter, chin lifted in defiance. Girls, my mother breathed, tears forming. You're so beautiful. We look like our mom, Mary said pointedly. Our real mom. Rose flinched in her wheelchair. She looked even worse than yesterday, if that was possible. Please, she whispered. I know I don't deserve your help, but... You're right, Ariana cut in. You don't deserve our help. Do you know what we found last night? Old articles about your modeling career? The interviews where you talked about wanting children someday, while our mom was raising us alone? I was young, Rose protested. Scared of losing everything. So you made our mom lose everything instead? Mary's voice shook with anger. Her family, her support system, everything except us? We were trying to help everyone, my father started. Help everyone? Ariana laughed harshly. You threw Mom away like garbage, treated her like an incubator, and now you want our bone marrow because karma finally caught up with you? The room fell silent. Rose started crying. My mother reached for tissues, and my father looked like he'd been slapped. Girls, I said softly, you don't have to. No, Mom, we do. Mary stood up. Because they need to hear this. We're not their backup plan. We're not their second chance. We're your daughters, the ones you chose to keep and love when everyone else chose money and fame. The doctors say I have weeks, maybe days, Rose sobbed. Please, I'm begging you. Ariana stood too. Then use those days to make peace with your choices, because we've made peace with ours. We choose our mom, the one who was there for every skinned knee, every school play, every midnight fever, the one who worked double shifts to give us everything we needed. We're leaving now, Mary announced. Don't contact us again. Don't try to guilt us. We know who our family is, and it's not you. As my daughters walked out, heads held high, I saw myself in them, the strength I'd found 15 years ago to defy my family and choose love over obligation. Betty, my mother pleaded, talk to them, make them understand. They understand perfectly, I said, standing. They understand that family isn't about DNA or obligation, it's about choice, and they've made theirs. I'm dying, Rose whispered. Your daughters are letting me die. No, Rose, your choices are letting you die, the same choices that killed our relationship 15 years ago. I moved toward the door. I hope you find peace with that. Outside, I found my daughters hugging Evan and Sarah. You okay? I asked, pulling them close. Better than okay, Ariana said. I feel free. Like we finally got to stand up for you, Mary added. The way you stood up for us before we were even born. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. This can't be how our story ends. Looking at my daughters, strong and fierce and compassionate in all the ways that mattered, I knew she was wrong. This wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. One without lies, without manipulation, without guilt. Ice cream? I suggested. I think we all earned it. Mom, Mary rolled her eyes. It's not even 2:00. Perfect time for ice cream, Evan chimed in. I know a place. As we walked out of the hospital, I felt lighter than I had in years. Sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. Sometimes standing your ground means watching others fall. And sometimes karma doesn't need your help at all. 3 days after our confrontation, I was in surgery when Evan appeared in the observation window, gesturing urgently. I finished my final suture before stepping out. Rose coded this morning, he said without preamble. They brought her back, but she's on a ventilator now. I leaned against the wall, letting my surgical cap dangle from my fingers. How long? Days, maybe hours. Your mother's been calling the hospital nonstop. The restraining order is still in place, he assured me. But Betty, she's asking for you. Just you, not the girls. I closed my eyes, remembering the last time Rose had really asked for my help. Look how that turned out. I'll think about it. When I got home that evening, I found the girls in Mary's room, huddled over Mary's laptop. Mom, Ariana called out, come look at this. On the screen was an old YouTube video, Rose's last major interview before retiring from modeling. The timestamp showed it was from 14 years ago. I've always wanted children, Rose was saying, perfectly made up and poised. But sometimes life has other plans. My sister was kind enough to be our surrogate, but... She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. She became unstable, possessive. Sometimes the people you trust the most hurt you the deepest. Turn it off, I said quietly. We found dozens of these, Mary's voice shook with anger. She spent years painting you as the villain. While you were working night shifts to put food on our table, she was telling the world you were unstable. And now she's dying, Ariana added. Karma's not just a bitch, it's a precise one. Language, I said automatically, but my heart wasn't in it. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Your mother's at my house. Says Rose is asking for forgiveness. What do you want me to do? Mom? Mary touched my arm. Are you going to see her? I don't know. I sank onto Mary's bed. Part of me wants to let her go without giving her the peace she's asking for. But that's not you, Ariana said softly. You're not them. You're better. We'll go with you, Mary offered. If you want. I looked at my daughters, so wise, so strong, so much better than the family that had thrown them away. No, I decided. This is something I need to do alone. Rose's hospital room was dim when I entered. The beeping monitors and whoosh of the ventilator created a rhythm that was all too familiar to me as a doctor. She looked tiny in the bed, nothing like the commanding presence she'd once been. Her eyes fluttered open when I approached. She couldn't speak around the breathing tube, but her hand moved weakly on the blanket. I took it, surprising us both. "I'm here," I said simply. She fumbled for the notepad by her bed. Her handwriting was shaky. "I'm sorry. I know. The girls are home, safe, loved." I kept my voice neutral. "Which is where they've been for 15 years. Tears rolled down her sunken cheeks as she wrote, "I was wrong about everything. Yes, you were. Can't change past, but need you to know I'm proud of you, of them." I felt my own tears starting. "You should be. They're amazing, and they're mine in every way that matters." "I know." Her hand trembled as she wrote, "You were always stronger, better. I was jealous." The monitors started beeping faster. A nurse appeared in the doorway, but I waved her off. I knew what was coming. "Rose," I said, leaning close, "I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. I'm letting go of all of it." Her eyes filled with tears as she wrote one last shaky message. "Thank you, little sister." The monitors started screaming 30 minutes later. I stepped back as the code team rushed in, but I knew it was too late. Rose was gone. In the hallway, I found Evan waiting. "The girls?" he asked. "Called Sarah to stay with them." I let him pull me into a hug. "She's gone." "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted, "but I will be." My phone lit up with a text from Mary. "Love you, Mom. Come home soon." Home, to my real family, to the life I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. "Let's go," Evan said gently. "Your daughters are waiting." As we walked out, I realized something. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about the person you're forgiving. Sometimes it's about finally setting yourself free. 6 months after Rose's funeral, I sat in my backyard watching my daughters set up for their 16th birthday party. The autumn air was crisp, and fairy lights twinkled in the growing dusk. "Mom!" Mary called from the patio. "Evan's here with the cake." I smiled, watching him carefully balance an enormous box while navigating through the gate. Over the past months, he'd become a constant presence in our lives, his quiet support evolving into something more. "Need help?" I asked, taking the box. "I've got it," he grinned, stealing a quick kiss. "Though I'm still not sure why you let the girls talk you into a sweet 16 party." "Because they deserve it," I said simply. "Every normal teenage moment they can get." The party was in full swing when Sarah arrived, looking unusually serious. She pulled me aside. "Your parents are at my house again," she said quietly. "They want to give the girls something, from Rose." My chest tightened. "What?" "Letters. She wrote them before, you know. And there's something else. She left the girls her estate." I watched Ariana and Mary laughing with their friends, so carefree and happy. "What do you think?" "I think," Sarah said carefully, "that you've raised 2 amazing young women who can make their own choices about their past." After the party, when the last guest had left and Evan was helping clean up, I gathered the girls on our old porch swing. "Rose left you something," I said. "Letters, and apparently her estate." They exchanged looks. "What do you want us to do?" Ariana asked. "It's not my decision. You're old enough to choose." "But you're our mom," Mary said firmly. "Your opinion matters." I took a deep breath. "I think sometimes the universe gives us chances, not to change the past, but to make peace with it." The next day, we met my parents at Sarah's house. They looked smaller somehow, grief and time having worn them down. My mother held out 2 envelopes and a legal document. "She wrote these the night before," she trailed off, "and she changed her will that same day." The girls took the letters, but left the will on the table. "We don't want her money," Ariana said firmly. "But," Mary added, "we'll read what she wrote." My father stepped forward. We wanted to say, we were wrong," my mother finished, "about everything, and we're sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix 15 years, I said quietly. "No," she agreed. "But Maybe we can try to fix the next 15. The girls looked at me, then at each other. Finally, Ariana spoke. We have conditions, she said. First, you acknowledge Mom as our only mother. Always. Second, Mary continued, you respect our boundaries. No guilt trips, no manipulation. And third, they said together, you accept that we're a package deal. All or nothing. My parents nodded, tears streaming down my mother's face. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I found the girls in our living room, Rose's letters open between them. She knew, Mary said softly, about being wrong, about karma. She wrote that watching us walk away that day made her finally understand what she'd thrown away. She said she hoped we'd grow up to be like you, Ariana added, strong enough to stand up for what's right. I pulled them close, breathing in the scent of their shampoo, feeling their hearts beat against mine. Mom? Mary's voice was muffled against my shoulder. Are we doing the right thing? Giving them another chance? I think, I said carefully, that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward carrying lessons instead of bitterness. The doorbell rang. Evan, bringing the leftover cake he'd promised to save. Your timing is perfect, I called out as he entered. We're having a moment. Those seem to be happening a lot lately, he smiled, setting down the cake and joining our group hug. Looking around at my little family, my fierce, loving daughters, the man who'd stood by us through everything, the possibility of reconciliation with my parents, I felt a peace I hadn't known in 15 years. Sometimes karma comes to collect its debts. Sometimes it offers a chance at redemption. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it gives you exactly what you need. Not the family you were born into, but the family you choose to build. Who wants cake? I asked. Mom, the girls groaned. It's midnight. Perfect time for cake, Evan winked. And it was. Perfect timing, perfect moment, perfect life, not despite our scars, but because of them. The end. The sickly sweet scent of disinfectant couldn't mask the tension hanging in the hospital corridor. I lingered outside room 342, my hand frozen on the medication cart, as my husband's voice drifted through the partially open door. Everything's arranged. She won't suspect a thing until it's too late. My name is Eliana, and after 19 years of marriage, I'd never heard that tone in Ronald's voice before. Calculated, cold, almost predatory. The transfer should be complete by Friday, he continued. Once the paperwork's filed, she'll have no legal recourse. Trust me, I've covered every angle. The cart's wheel squeaked as I shifted my weight. My hands trembled as I pretended to reorganize supplies, straining to catch every word. A patient call light flashed at the end of the hall, but for the first time in my 15 years as a nurse, I ignored it. Martha's divorce left her vulnerable. Perfect timing, really. And Marie, well, teenagers are easy to manipulate when they're angry at their parents. My sister and my daughter. The two people I'd been desperately trying to protect since Martha's marriage imploded 6 months ago. The medication vials clinked as my fingers tightened around the cart handle. Mother's already on board. She doesn't know the details, but she'll back my play. She always does. Of course my mother would side with Ronald. She'd worshipped him since the day he'd walked into our lives, the successful businessman who'd swept her eldest daughter off her feet. If she only knew what I'd discovered in the past few weeks. The missing funds from our joint accounts, the secret meetings, the whispered phone calls. Austin's keeping Marie distracted. Smart kid knows exactly what to say to keep her mind off what's happening at home, worth every penny I'm paying him. My daughter's tutor, the charming young man I'd trusted to help with her college preparations. The betrayal burned in my throat like acid. Footsteps approached the door. I pushed the cart forward, trying to appear busy as Ronald emerged, phone still pressed to his ear. He paused when he saw me, his practiced smile sliding into place. Gotta go, he said into the phone. Important meeting. He ended the call, tucking the phone into his suit pocket. Sweetheart, what are you doing on this floor? I thought you worked in pediatrics. Covering a shift for Marvin, I said, forcing myself to meet his eyes. His mother's in hospice? Always the helpful one. He kissed my cheek, his cologne overwhelming. Don't work too late. Marie's making dinner tonight. I watched him stride away, his expensive shoes clicking against the linoleum. My daughter cooking dinner? Marie hadn't set foot in our kitchen since she'd started spending time with Austin 3 months ago. The call light was still blinking. I pushed the cart toward it, my mind racing. Whatever Ronald was planning, he'd wrapped our entire family into his scheme. My sister, my daughter, my mother. Even Marie's tutor was involved. In the supply closet, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called the one person I could still trust. "Marvin, I need your help." My voice cracked. "Remember when you said something felt off about Ronald's investment proposal for the hospital pension fund? I think I just found out why." The line went quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" he finally asked. "Access to the hospital's financial records. And—" I hesitated, knowing this request would change everything. "I need you to help me destroy my husband before he destroys our family." Another pause. "Come to my office after your shift. Bring everything you've found so far." I ended the call and leaned against the metal shelving, my heart pounding. The game Ronald was playing had rules I didn't understand yet, but I was done being a pawn. It was time to become a player. The call light blinked again, more urgent now. I straightened my scrubs and took a deep breath. First, I had patients to care for. Then, I had a family to save. The financial records spread across Marvin's desk told a story of calculated deception. Each transaction, each transfer painted a clearer picture of Ronald's scheme. But it was my sister's text that made my blood run cold. "Marie's not at my place," Martha wrote. "She said she was staying with me tonight." I gripped the edge of Marvin's desk. "I need to go." "Wait." Marvin's hand hovered over a document. "Look at these timestamps. The transfers to Austin's account started 3 months ago, right when Marie's grades began slipping." The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. That's when I hired him as her tutor. $2,000, weekly payments. Marvin tapped the screen. "That's not tutoring money." My phone buzzed again. Martha. "Found her. She's at that new cafe on 5th with Austin." "Keep watching them," I texted back. "I'm on my way." The cafe was packed with evening customers when I arrived. Through the window, I spotted my sister hunched in a corner booth, pretending to read a magazine. 3 tables away, Marie sat with Austin, her face animated as she gestured with her hands. The same way I used to at her age, when everything felt possible and adults were just obstacles to be overcome. "She's been here an hour," Martha whispered as I slid into her booth. "He keeps showing her something on his phone. She looks excited." I studied Austin's body language, the calculated way he leaned forward, how his eyes darted to the door every few minutes. "Has Ronald called?" "Twice. I covered for her." Martha's fingers drummed against her coffee cup. "Eliana, there's something else. Elijah called me this morning." The mention of her ex-husband's name made me turn. "What did he want?" "He asked about Ronald, specific questions about his business practices, his partners." She lowered her voice. "He said he's been investigating him for months, that Ronald's involved in something bigger than we realize." At Marie's table, Austin stood suddenly, heading toward the restroom. His phone lay face up on the table. "Watch my purse," I said, standing. "Eliana, don't—" But I was already moving, timing my path to intersect with Marie's table. My daughter's eyes widened as I approached. "Mom, what are you—" I snatched Austin's phone, my fingers flying over the screen before it could lock. Messages, recent calls, photos. "Hey!" Austin's voice cut through the cafe chatter. "What do you think you're doing?" The last opened message thread caught my eye, from Ronald. "Keep her occupied, whatever it takes." Marie grabbed for the phone. "Mom, stop it! You're embarrassing me!" I held the device out of reach, scrolling frantically. More messages appeared. Dates, times, instructions. A photo of bank documents. My signature forged. Austin reached us, his charm replaced by something harder. "Mrs. Eliana, that's private property." "Like the property you're helping my husband steal?" The words came out sharp enough to draw stares from nearby tables. The tutoring was just a cover, wasn't it? What's he paying you to manipulate my daughter? Marie stood so quickly her chair toppled. He's not manipulating me. Austin's the only one who actually listens to me, who treats me like an adult. Marie, but she was already pushing past me, tears streaming down her face. Austin moved to follow her. I grabbed his arm. "Touch my daughter again, and I'll make sure every college in the state knows what kind of tutor you really are." His mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. "Careful, Eliana. You don't want to make an enemy of your husband's friends." Martha appeared at my side as Austin retrieved his phone and left. Marie took off toward the bus stop. "Want me to follow her?" I shook my head, watching my daughter's retreating figure through the window. "She'll go home. She has to keep up appearances for Ronald." "What are you going to do?" The cafe's overhead lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the empty table where my daughter had sat, plotting with my enemies. I'm going to talk to Elijah. If he's been investigating Ronald, he must have found something we can use. Be careful, Martha warned. Elijah's not exactly stable since the divorce. Neither am I. I gathered my purse, my mind already racing ahead to the next move in this dangerous game. Not anymore. The hospital's administrative files filled Marvin's computer screen, each document more damning than the last. My hands trembled as I read the numbers. Pension funds diverted, investment accounts drained, employee savings vanished into shell companies. Ronald's been systematically stealing from the hospital for years, Marvin said, his voice tight. But here's where it gets worse. He pulled up another document. Your signature's on half these authorizations. That's impossible. I know you didn't, but someone did. He pointed to a date. This one was signed while you were in surgery with that trauma case last month, remember? The 6-hour procedure? The room seemed to tilt sideways. He's setting me up to take the fall. There's more, Marvin hesitated. The board's launching an investigation. Your name's already been flagged. A knock at the office door made us both jump. The handle turned before we could respond, and my mother's caregiver stepped in. Jason? I straightened. What are you doing here? Your mother sent me. His usually calm face was etched with concern. She needs you at the house, now. I can't just... Ronald's there, he cut in, with Marie. The drive to my mother's house was a blur. Jason's car weaved through traffic as he spoke in low tones. They arrived an hour ago. Ronald was agitated, started talking about moving assets, protecting the family. Your mother seemed confused, but she kept agreeing with everything he said. And Marie? Silent, wouldn't look at anyone. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. There's something else. A man showed up just before I left, said his name was Elijah. Martha's ex-husband. My chest tightened. What did he want? Don't know. Your mother wouldn't let him in, but he said he'd wait. The scene at the house was worse than I'd imagined. Elijah stood in the driveway, arguing with my mother. Ronald's voice boomed from inside. Marie sat on the front steps, her face buried in her phone. You have no right to be here, my mother shouted at Elijah. Haven't you caused enough damage? Show her the papers, Elijah called when he saw me. Show her what her precious son-in-law's been doing with her foundation's money. Ronald appeared in the doorway. Eliana, don't listen to him. He's trying to destroy our family. Like you destroyed mine? Elijah advanced. Tell them how you really made your fortune. Tell them about the families you bankrupted. Mom? Marie's voice cracked. What's happening? I moved toward my daughter, but Ronald got there first. Go inside, sweetheart. This doesn't concern you. Everything concerns her, I said, including what you're paying Austin to do. The color drained from Ronald's face. Behind him, my mother gasped. You're all being manipulated, Ronald recovered quickly. Elijah's bitter about his divorce. He's turning you against me. The offshore accounts, Elijah interrupted. The forged documents, the missing pension funds. Should I keep going? Marie stood suddenly. Austin said you were helping him start a business. That's what the money was for. Marie, Ronald reached for her. Don't touch her. The words came out like ice. Don't you dare touch our daughter. Silence fell. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Show them, Elijah pressed. Show them what I found. I pulled out my phone, opened the files Marvin had sent. Mother, look at these. Really look. But my mother backed away. I don't want to see anything he's given you. Ronald's protected this family. He's been stealing from you for years, Jason spoke up. Everyone turned. He stepped forward, pulled an envelope from his jacket. I've been watching, documenting everything. The late-night calls, the mysterious visitors, the papers he makes you sign without reading. Ronald's mask cracked. For just a moment, I saw the truth. The desperation, the fury, the fear. Marie, I said softly, check your phone. The last message from Austin. She did. Her face crumpled as she read. I trusted you, she whispered to Ronald. Then she ran inside. This isn't over, Ronald snarled, but his eyes darted between faces, calculating odds, measuring loyalty. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. The front door slammed as Elijah stepped closer, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Should I tell them about Singapore, or shall you? Ronald's face went ash gray. Whatever Singapore meant, it was the key to everything. And suddenly I knew, this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about survival. The Singapore files lay scattered across Elijah's kitchen table like pieces of a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a different angle of Ronald's deception. 3 companies dissolved overnight, Elijah said, tapping a document. 48 employees left without severance. One man lost everything: his house, his savings. 2 weeks later, he drove his car off a bridge. My throat tightened. And Ronald? Walked away with millions, the same pattern he's using now with the hospital pension fund. He slid another paper forward. But here's what makes it personal. Martha's trust fund was part of that deal. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, rain peppered the windows, distorting the streetlights. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because Ronald's about to do it again, but this time..." Elijah's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. "Your mother's called an emergency family meeting, tonight." My own phone lit up with the message. Dinner at 7, attendance mandatory, my mother's way of maintaining the illusion of control. "She's choosing sides," I said. "She already has." Elijah gathered the papers. Ronald's convinced her to transfer her estate into a new trust, one he controls. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the rain-streaked glass, I recognized Jason's silhouette. "Your mother sent me to fetch you," he said when I opened the door. His eyes darted to Elijah, then back to me. "But there's something you need to know first." He pulled out his phone, played a recording. My mother's voice, thin with anxiety. "The Singapore deal wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. Ronald promised." "When was this?" I demanded. "Last night. She talks in her sleep sometimes, mentions dates, names." Jason lowered his voice. "She knew about Singapore before it happened. She helped Ronald set it up." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. My own mother, complicit in destroying lives, including her younger daughter's future. "There's more," Jason continued. "Austin visited her yesterday morning. They talked about Marie's college fund." My hands curled into fists. "She wouldn't dare." "She already has." Elijah held up another document. "The transfer was completed this morning. Ronald now controls every penny of Marie's education money." The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. The tutoring, the late-night meetings, Austin's manipulation. It was all about isolating Marie, ensuring she'd side with Ronald when everything fell apart. My phone buzzed again. "Martha. Marie's missing. Austin's not answering his phone." The world tilted sideways. I steadied myself against the door frame. "I know where they'll be," Elijah said, grabbing his keys. "The same place Ronald took his victims in Singapore. Somewhere public, somewhere they can't make a scene while he explains how this is all for their own good." The drive to the art museum was tense with unspoken fears. We found them in the East Wing: Ronald, my mother, Austin, and Marie. My daughter's face was streaked with tears as Ronald gestured at something on his tablet. "Just sign here, sweetheart," he was saying. "It's the only way to protect your future. The only thing she needs protection from is you." My voice carried across the empty gallery. Ronald's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing raw fury before smoothing into concern. "Eliana, you're not thinking clearly. Tell her, Gabrielle. Tell her how we're trying to help." My mother stepped forward, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. "Sometimes love means making difficult choices." "Like Singapore?" The words hit their mark. My mother stumbled back. "Jason recorded everything, Mother, every guilty whisper, every confession." Marie looked between us, confusion turning to understanding. "What's Singapore?" "Ask your grandmother," Elijah said quietly. "Ask her about the man who died because of their difficult choices." Austin moved toward Marie, but I was faster. "Touch her, and every recording, every document goes public. Your promising future ends right here." "Marie," Ronald tried one last time, "you know I only want what's best." "What you want," I cut in, "is control. But it's over. The hospital board knows everything. The police will too once they see what Elijah found." The tablet slipped from Ronald's hands, clattering on the marble floor. In the shattered screen, I caught my reflection and saw something I hadn't noticed before. I was smiling. The dining room in my mother's house felt like a stage set for a Greek tragedy. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light, throwing prismatic shadows across faces that had become unrecognizable to me. Ronald sat at the head of the table, my mother to his right, both wearing expressions of practiced concern. "You're being unreasonable," my mother said, cutting her meat with precise movements. "Ronald has always protected this family." Marie pushed her food around her plate. The bruise on her wrist, from when she'd fallen earlier that afternoon, was darkening to purple. An accident that happened moments after she'd tried to tell me something about Austin. "Protection shouldn't leave bruises," I said. Ronald's fork clinked against his plate. "That was unfortunate, but if she hadn't been running—" "From what?" Martha interrupted. "What exactly was my niece running from?" The air crackled with tension. Jason moved silently around the table, refilling water glasses, his presence a reminder of everything he'd overheard. Marie, Ronald's voice softened dangerously, why don't you tell them about the scholarship opportunity Austin found for you, the one in Singapore? My daughter's face went pale. I haven't decided. It's already arranged, my mother cut in. The paperwork just needs signatures. The room tilted sideways. Singapore. Always Singapore. She's 17, I said. She can't leave the country without my consent. Actually, Ronald pulled out a folder, as her legal guardian. What did you say? The papers you signed last month for Marie's college fund? He smiled. They included a transfer of guardianship. Temporary, of course, just until she turns 18. Martha's glass shattered in her grip, blood mixed with water on the white tablecloth. You forged those papers, I whispered. Prove it. Ronald's mask slipped, revealing something reptilian beneath. Your signatures on everything. The hospital transfers, the trust documents, even the Singapore arrangements. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected businessman or the unstable nurse who's been making wild accusations? Tell them, Marie suddenly burst out, tell them what Austin really... The crash came from behind me. I turned to see Jason sprawled on the floor, a serving tray overturned beside him. Marie screamed. He's having a seizure, my mother cried. But I'd seen seizures. This wasn't one. Jason's eyes found mine as he convulsed, trying to form words. Call an ambulance! Martha grabbed her phone. No! Ronald stood. I'll take him. My car's faster. Don't! Jason gasped. The drink, Understanding hit like a thunderbolt. I lunged for Marie's untouched water glass, but Ronald was faster. It shattered against the wall. Mother, I said quietly, what did you let him do? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Sometimes sacrifices... Sacrifices? Martha's voice rose hysterically. Like Singapore? Like that man who died? Marie stood so quickly her chair toppled. What man? What are you talking about? Your grandfather, Jason managed, his breathing labored. Tell her... About her grandfather. The color drained from my mother's face. Ronald moved toward Jason, but Marvin, who'd been silent until now, blocked his path. The ambulance is coming, Martha said, and the police. You've lost control, I told Ronald, of everything. His laugh was hollow. Have I? Marie's still legally under my guardianship. The hospital board still has evidence of your fraud. And now a tragic accident at a family dinner. He glanced at Jason. Stress can do terrible things to people. Marie, I said, not taking my eyes off Ronald. Get your things. You're leaving with Martha. She's not going anywhere. Ronald's hand closed around Marie's arm. Tell them, sweetheart, tell them how happy you are about Singapore. My daughter looked at me, then at the bruise on her wrist, then at Jason still gasping on the floor. Something shifted in her eyes. You're right, she said quietly. I should tell them everything. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ronald's grip tightened. I should tell them about the recordings, Marie continued. The ones Austin didn't know I was making. Every meeting, every threat, every promise about Singapore. She pulled out her phone. Should we play them now? The look on Ronald's face made me realize he wasn't the only one who could orchestrate a staged catastrophe. The hospital's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as I watched Jason fight for his life through the ICU window. The doctors had confirmed what I already knew, targeted poisoning, carefully dosed to look like natural causes. He's stabilized, Marvin said, joining me, but the police want to know why you delayed calling the ambulance. My hands curled into fists. They think I was involved? Ronald's been talking to them, suggesting things. He hesitated. The board suspended you pending investigation. A nurse I'd worked with for 10 years walked past, averting her eyes. My reputation, my career, everything I'd built, dissolving like sugar in rain. My phone buzzed. Martha. Marie's gone. The world tilted sideways. What? She went to get her laptop from the house. Austin was waiting. They left together 20 minutes ago. The memory of Marie's bruised wrist flashed through my mind. Track her phone. Already tried. It's off. But Elijah says he knows where Austin takes his targets. Some warehouse by the industrial park. Don't move. I'm coming. But as I turned to leave, 2 police detectives blocked my path. Mrs. Eliana, the older one said, we need to discuss the incident at your mother's house and some concerning financial transactions. My daughter's missing. We know. Your husband's already filed a report. Claims you've been unstable, making threats. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps. Through the ICU window, Jason's monitors beeped steadily, each sound a reminder of how Ronald had nearly killed him to keep him quiet. Check his water glass, I said. From the dinner. Check Jason's blood work. You'll find... The evidence has been contaminated, the younger detective cut in. Your mother's housekeeper already cleaned everything up, on Ronald's instructions. Of course she had. Ronald never left loose ends. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. The message contained one image, a photograph I'd never seen before. My mother, 20 years younger, standing beside a man I recognized from the Singapore files. The man who'd died. Below it, text appeared. Ask your mother who really killed your father. The timestamp showed it came from Marie's phone. I need to go, I told the detectives. Now. If you leave the hospital, we'll have to... Marvin stepped between us. I'm invoking medical privacy laws. This conversation is over until her lawyer arrives. They're taking Marie to Singapore, I said once we were alone. Ronald's recreating his old pattern. But this time... I showed him the photo. His face went gray. Your father's car accident. It wasn't... An accident? Apparently not. The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. That's why my mother always supported Ronald. He helped her hide something. Where are you going? To the warehouse. Martha and Elijah are meeting me. The police will follow you. Let them. I touched the ICU glass one last time. Jason risked everything to protect Marie. I won't let that be for nothing. But in the parking lot, my mother waited beside my car. You can't stop this, she said. Some secrets have to stay buried. Like what really happened to my father? She flinched. You don't understand. I understand that you and Ronald murdered my father. That you've been helping him destroy lives ever since. That now you're helping him take my daughter. To protect her, Singapore is safe, far from all this mess you're creating. The last time Ronald sent someone to Singapore, they died. Your father was weak. He would have ruined everything, just like you're trying to do now. She pulled out her phone. One call, and those detectives arrest you. Marie goes to Singapore with Austin, clean slate. And if I back off? Then maybe we can discuss arrangements, supervised visits once she's settled. The hospital lights cast my mother's shadow long and dark across the pavement. In it, I saw every lie, every manipulation, every moment she'd chosen Ronald's schemes over her own children. You know what's funny? I said quietly. I actually recorded that entire conversation, just like Marie recorded Austin. I guess it runs in the family. Her face contorted. She reached for her phone, but I was already moving. Behind her, Marvin appeared with the detectives. I'll tell them everything, she hissed as they approached. Good. I got into my car. Start with Singapore. I'm sure they'd love to hear about my father's accident. In the rearview mirror, I watched them lead her away. One betrayal exposed. But Marie was still out there, and time was running out. The warehouse loomed against the twilight sky, its broken windows reflecting the last traces of sunlight. Martha's car was already parked outside, Elijah standing guard beside it. Third floor, he said as I approached. Ronald's waiting with Austin. They have Marie. The police? 10 minutes out, but... He hesitated. There's something else. The Singapore files. They weren't just about money laundering. They were about human trafficking. Young girls sent overseas as students. The bruise on Marie's wrist flashed through my mind. That's why he wanted guardianship. Eliana, Martha emerged from the shadows. Jason's awake. He told the police everything. About Mother, about Dad's accident, about Ronald's operation. Then we end this. Now. The warehouse stairs creaked under our feet. Each step brought back memories. My father's smile, my mother's lies, Ronald's calculated manipulation of everyone I loved. We found them in what had once been an office. Marie sat in a corner, Austin's hand on her shoulder. Ronald stood by a desk covered in papers, looking almost bored. Right on schedule, he said, though I expected you sooner. It's over, I said. The police know everything, about Singapore, about the trafficking, about my father. Do they? He smiled. Or do they have the story your mother's telling them? About how you've lost your mind with paranoid delusions, how you've been threatening Marie, tampering with hospital records? I have proof. You have nothing. Every document, every recording, it all leads back to you. The perfect fall from grace. Respected nurse becomes unstable conspiracy theorist, loses everything, he gestured to Marie, including her daughter. Show her, Marie said suddenly. Ronald's smile faltered. What? Show her what you made me record. My daughter's voice trembled. The confession you forced me to make. Austin's grip tightened on her shoulder. Marie. Or I could show them this instead. She pulled out her phone. Every meeting, every threat, every detail about Singapore. About what really happened to my grandfather. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ronald's mask cracked, revealing something feral beneath. You ungrateful little... He lunged for the phone. Several things happened at once. Austin pulled Marie back. Martha screamed. Elijah moved to intercept Ronald. And I saw the glint of metal in Ronald's hand. The gunshot echoed off concrete walls. Elijah stumbled, clutching his side. Martha ran to him as Ronald turned the gun toward Marie. The phone, he said. Now. It's already uploaded, Marie said. Everything, to every news outlet in the city, to the police, to the hospital board. You're lying. Check your phone, I said quietly. The notification should be starting right about now. His free hand fumbled for his pocket. As his attention wavered, Austin made his move, but not the one I expected. He shoved Marie toward Ronald. We had a deal, Austin said. I deliver her to Singapore, I get my cut. You pathetic. Marie twisted away from both men. I recorded you too, every promise, every plan. Did you really think I was that naive? Sirens wailed in the distance. Ronald's composure shattered completely. You're just like your father, he snarled at me. He couldn't understand either. The bigger picture, the necessity of sacrifice. The only sacrifice, I said, was letting you into our lives. He raised the gun again, but this time Marie was ready. She threw her phone at his face as Martha tackled him from behind. The gun skittered across the floor. Austin bolted for the door, but Elijah, despite his wound, caught him with a well-placed punch. Singapore, Ronald spat as I picked up his gun. You have no idea what you've lost. The connections, the power. The only power you had, I said, was what we gave you. And now? I nodded toward the window where red and blue lights painted the warehouse walls. Now you have nothing. As the police burst in, I watched my husband's empire crumble. But it was Marie's hand slipping into mine that told me we'd truly won. Mom? She whispered. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. About the recordings. You did exactly what you needed to do. I squeezed her hand. You survived, just like I taught you. Through the broken windows, dawn began to break, the first light of a world without Ronald's shadows. The visiting room at the detention center smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Austin sat across from me, his charm replaced by something harder, more desperate. I want a deal, he said. You had your chance for deals. I placed a folder on the table. But there's something you still haven't explained, the other girls. His eyes darted to the guard by the door. I don't know what... Oh. Singapore wasn't just about Marie. Ronald's operation went back years. How many others did you help him target? Help him? Austin's laugh was brittle. You still don't get it, do you? This was my operation. Ronald was just the money man, the respectable face. I found the girls, I groomed them, He stopped, realizing too late what he'd admitted. Behind the two-way mirror, I knew the detectives were recording everything. Marie was different, he continued quickly. I actually cared. Save it for your trial. I stood. The Singapore authorities are particularly interested in your testimony. Outside, Marie waited with Martha. My daughter's face had regained its color, though the bruise on her wrist had faded to a yellowish reminder. Did he confess? She asked. To everything, including the other victims. I touched her shoulder. You saved them, you know. Your recordings, your courage, you brought down their entire network. But not without help, she glanced at Martha. Aunt Martha taught me how to hide the recordings, and Elijah is recovering well, Martha finished. The doctors say he can leave the hospital next week. We drove to the courthouse where my mother's hearing was scheduled. Jason sat on the steps, looking frail but determined. They're ready for us, he said. Inside, my mother wouldn't meet my eyes as she pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges. The judge's words washed over me. Sentences, restitution, closure. But it was my mother's final statement that cut deepest. I thought I was protecting them, she said. Like I protected myself when their father threatened to expose my affairs. Ronald promised to make it look like an accident. Marie squeezed my hand as the bailiff led my mother away. At home, our new home, bought with the recovered funds from Ronald's accounts, I found Marie in her father's old study. She held a photograph I hadn't seen in years. My father teaching me to ride a bike, his smile bright and real. Do you hate her? Marie asked. Grandmother? No. I sat beside her. Hate takes too much energy, and we need that energy for rebuilding. The police found 3 more girls, she said quietly. In Singapore, they're coming home. Because of you. Because we fought back. All of us. She traced my father's face in the photo. Do you think he'd be proud? Of us exposing a trafficking ring? Of you being brave enough to gather evidence? Of our family choosing truth over comfortable lies? I smiled. Yes, but he'd be prouder of what we do next. Which is? Live, help others. Remember that revenge isn't about destroying people, it's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. The doorbell rang. Martha stood outside with Marvin and Elijah carrying takeout containers. The hospital board called, Marvin announced as we set up dinner. They've reinstated you, with back pay and an apology. And Ronald? Martha asked, talking to prosecutors, trying to save himself. Elijah's wound made him wince as he sat. But with Austin's confession, Marie placed the last plate on the table. Mom, I've been thinking about college. Singapore's definitely off the list, I said. Actually, she straightened, I want to study criminal justice, help other families fight back. The evening light filtered through our new windows, casting warm shadows across faces that had weathered betrayal and emerged stronger, not unscathed, but unbroken. First rule of fighting back, I said, raising my glass. Never do it alone. To family, Martha offered. To truth, Elijah added. To justice, Marie said firmly. To all of it, I finished, and to whatever comes next. Outside, the sun set on the remnants of Ronald's empire, but inside, surrounded by the people who'd fought beside me, I finally understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free.